Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the February 7th, 2012 meeting of the Downers Grove Village Council. It's my privilege to call this meeting to order. We have, as always, agendas on either side of Village Hall here over on the shelf, so if anyone would like to pick up a copy of our agenda and follow along with our meeting tonight, we would encourage you to do so. It is customary for us to begin our meetings by reciting the Pledge of Allegiance, so at this point in time, I would invite everyone to please stand and join us in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. And now, I would like to ask our fine village clerk to please call the roll.
Commissioner Rankin? Here. Commissioner Barnett?
Here.
Commissioner Neustadt?
Here.
Commissioner Durkin?
Here.
Commissioner Waldeck?
Here.
Commissioner Schnell? Here. Mayor Tully?
Here. Thank you very much. That brings us to item 3 on our agenda, which is the portion of the meeting where we approve minutes from prior council meetings. Tonight we have minutes from our January 17th, 2012 meeting, which seems like it was 1,000 years ago, since this is our first meeting in February. Are there any changes, corrections to the minutes from January 17th of this year? Seeing none, or hearing none, I should say, do I have a motion to approve?
So moved.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Minutes are approved by voice vote. Thank you very much. That brings us to item 4 on our agenda for this evening, which is a segment of our meeting where we entertain public comments on matters of a general nature. This is the opportunity to ask questions or make comments to the village council and staff with respect to matters of a general nature, not necessarily things that are on our agenda tonight, which we will have opportunities to discuss when those items come up on the agenda. If there are any questions or comments of a general nature at this time, I would ask that you please come down to the podium, give us your name and address, and we would welcome to hear from you. Are there any questions or comments of a general nature? Not seeing any movement out in the audience, we'll move on. And as I said, there will be opportunities for public comment when we get to specific agenda items we'll be discussing tonight. It brings us to number 5, public hearings. We have no public hearings tonight, so we zip right along to number 6, which is our consent agenda. Do I have a motion to approve the consent agenda as presented?
So moved.
Second.
Any questions or comments from anyone in the audience with respect to any of the items that are on the consent agenda? Any questions or comments from any members of the council with respect to any items on the consent agenda? May I have a roll call, please?
Commissioner Schnell?
Aye.
Commissioner Durkin?
Aye.
Commissioner Rankin?
Aye.
Commissioner Barnett?
Aye.
Commissioner Neustadt?
Aye.
Commissioner Waldeck?
Aye.
Mayor Tully?
Aye, the consent agenda has been approved unanimously. That brings us to item 7, our active agenda. There are 2 items that are on our active agenda tonight. These are items that we will be voting on this evening. First item on the active agenda is 7A. Do I have a motion to adopt and approve publication of the Village of Downers Grove 2012 zoning map?
Mayor Tully, I move to adopt an ordinance adopting and approving publication of the Village of Downers Grove 2012 zoning map as presented.
Second.
Any questions or comments from any members of the audience with respect to this item? Any questions or comments from any members of the council? Roll call, please.
Commissioner Schnell?
Aye.
Commissioner Durkin?
Aye.
Commissioner Rankin?
Aye.
Commissioner Barnett?
Aye.
Commissioner Neustadt?
Aye.
Commissioner Waldeck?
Aye.
Mayor Tully?
Aye, that matter passes unanimously. It brings us to item 7B. Do I have a motion to authorize a special use to permit a business/professional office at 5338 Main Street in Downers Grove?
So moved. Second.
Any questions or comments from any members of the audience with respect to this item? Any questions or comments from any members of the council with respect to this item? Hearing none. Roll call, please.
Commissioner Durkin?
Aye.
Commissioner Neustadt?
Aye.
Commissioner Rankin?
Aye.
Commissioner Barnett?
Aye.
Commissioner Waldeck?
Aye.
Commissioner Schnell?
Aye.
Mayor Tully?
Aye, that matter also passes unanimously. That concludes our active agenda for this evening, and this is now where we turn to item 8 on our agenda, which is our first reading, or our workshop segment of our meeting. These are items that we will be discussing tonight, but will not be acting on tonight. They will be acted upon, if at all, at a later date. And we have a number of items on our first reading or workshop agenda tonight, and so it is customary to turn the portion of the meeting over to the village manager, who usually then will direct where it goes from there. Mr. Spielman.
I will turn the first 4 items over to our Community Development Director, Tom Daybreiner, as the first four items relate to a petition to construct a Walgreens at the northwest corner of 63rd and Woodward.
Thank you. Good evening.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. A resolution and ordinances have been prepared for annexation, rezoning, lot consolidation, and a special use for a Walgreens store at the northwest corner of 63rd Street and Woodward Avenue. We are seeking approval on the February 14th, 2012 active agenda. And the Plan Commission recommended denial by a vote of 7-1. However, staff is recommending approval, and we will explain. This is the approximate location. It is a 1.9 acre site located in the northwest corner of Woodward and 63rd, across the street from Meadowbrook Shopping Center, which is also zoned B2 general retail business. The property at the southeast corner is also commercial property, although it is zoned R3. It is part of a planned development. It remains a 15,000 square foot shopping center. Actually, let's look at that. There's an aerial of the site. The properties to the east, north, and west of the subject property are all currently unincorporated. Most of these properties are improved with single-family homes. The proposed 15,000 square foot Walgreens, we've overlaid the plan there so that people can get a sense of proportion and where it would sit on the property. 15,000 square foot building would be located in the center of the site with a surface parking lot surrounding the building on the east and south sides. Single-lane drive-through window would be located along the north side of the building. Screening would be provided with new landscaping and a 6-foot fence along the north and the west property lines. As proposed, the proposal would meet all the requirements for the proposed B2 district. There would be 2 driveways, and I'll use my handy-dandy laser here. 2 driveways, one along Woodward, one along 63rd Street. The petitioner would install a new public sidewalk along Woodward Avenue, which is shown in the plans here. It does not exist. There is one that exists along 63rd that it would connect to. Stormwater detention would be provided underground on this, under this plan. The Plan Commission conducted a hearing on this petition over the course of 2 meetings on December 5th in 2011 and January 9th, 2012. The Plan Commission ultimately voted to recommend denial of the request with a vote of 7-1. The dissenting vote believed that the zoning classification was in fact compatible with comprehensive plans designation and found that the impacts from the development would be similar or less than the recommended office uses. Staff believes the proposed rezoning also meets the standards for approval of amendments to the zoning ordinance per section 28.1702 of the municipal code, which is in the zoning ordinance. Furthermore, the staff believes the proposed development also meets the standards for a special use, which can be found under section 28.1902 of the zoning ordinance. And finally, the staff believes the proposed final plat of subdivision for lot consolidations, all of the requirements there are met under both the subdivision and the zoning ordinances. There were a number of questions that have come up, and I have some additional slides that I hope will be helpful. This is the newly revised plan. The plan that all of you have in your packets needed to be updated. This, in fact, represents the update, and we will distribute some paper copies for you in a moment. But this shows a building that is about 10 feet farther to the east than the set of plans that you have. It allows for a little bit more room in the rear of the building. It kind of helps out the driving aisle on the east side, which was a little bit large initially. If we draw that blue line represents kind of a cross-section and is relevant only to the next slide that I'm about to show you. This shows the relationship between the residence to the north with regard to that building. And I've got a couple ways that we're going to show this evening. This is one of them. This is a sketch that was drawn up just in the last couple days to help show that relationship. Again, that blue line roughly cutting through the two buildings there. You get a sense of what's happening there. What staff did, a two-dimensional drawing is one thing. What staff did was come up with kind of a three-dimensional representation. Before we get started with the three-dimensional representation, I want to say a few things about it, because this is not the building. This is simply a couple of boxes put together in a drawing that represents the building. It's not the exact house, but it does represent the approximate location of the house. It does represent generally a layout, but it is not at all complete in terms of showing all the landscaping, things like that, all the windows. So set aside how these boxes look, but it does show relative proportions. So why don't we go ahead and click on this. I want you to take a look at this video, and we'll show it a couple times for you. But as it moves through this series, this is now we're on Woodward Avenue. We're looking down. You can see the drive-through here, and we're going to zoom in on the property. You get a sense of how that building could look relative to the property next door to the north. Could we maybe run through that again? It starts out 63rd Street looking north and starts to swing around. We do kind of a fly around over to Woodward Avenue. And there's the drive-through. We have some landscaping. We have a 6-foot tall fence. This whole area that sits up about 3 feet above the, or below the property. This property sits 3 feet above the Walgreens property. So you kind of get a sense of the proportion there. Why don't we just maybe move through to the next. That's the still from the final shot from the neighboring property. So you get a sense of exactly what that might look like next door. You can see some of the landscaping peeking over the fence. In between the building and the fence, here is the north side of the building, the drive-through, the fence, and the area where the landscaping would be. This is about just short of 43 feet between the building and the fence, roughly the property line. By comparison, there is a Walgreens to the west at Belmont. There is about 5 feet between the building and the property line. So this is providing significantly more space. This isn't necessarily the exact building, but it is a building that's located at Ogden and Cass. This would be similar in size and function. And again, this is just to give you a sense of how it might look. This is, again, highlighting the property, the area that we're talking about, and this is what it looks like today from the southeast corner looking northwest, and we can lay in that same photograph that's from the other location. You get a sense of how it might sit on that site. The sign is illegal. We would take care of that, of course, before it was built. But in terms of the building and how it might sit on the site, that's roughly how it would look. So staff is recommending a number of conditions associated with this, should you choose to approve it in a future meeting. We ask that we restrict the commercial uses to retail pharmacy and with the drive-through. We would like to restrict the site plan to whatever the plan is that's finally approved by the Village Council. We would like to limit truck traffic on Woodward Avenue, perhaps only to the driveway and not any further north. Further north in the county, the Woodward Avenue has a weight restriction, so we would not want to encourage trucks to the north. Cross-access, we would ask for cross-access with any non-residential redevelopment that may occur at some point in the future to the west. And we would also ask that we limit hours of operation to 8 a.m. to 10 p.m. And limit delivery hours 8 a.m. to 9 p.m. These items have been discussed with the petitioner, and they are in agreement. With that, I can answer any questions. However, David Shaw, representing the petitioner, would like to, I think, introduce some of his team and make a small presentation as well. And we do have some materials that they wish to be handed out at this time.
Very good. Mr. Shaw, good evening.
Thank you, Tom, and thank you, members of the council, for giving us, I know this is a little bit of a deviation from your normal process, but for giving us the opportunity to make this presentation in support of our position that this development should go forward. We believe that it is a quality development. We think it's well-suited to the location. We think it would be a substantial asset to annex this property and develop it in the village of Downers Grove. And to that end, I am going to ask our team who's with us tonight, David Augusto, who is a vice president of Draper and Kramer, the principal developer, and Michael Hoffman from Teska and Associates, our land planning consultant, to address some of the issues that we've encountered at the Plan Commission. I apologize, our traffic consultants who have played a major role in the analysis and presentation we've made so far, both of them are sick tonight. Legitimately, we checked. And I would certainly like the opportunity, if there are any traffic issues, which there may well be, to have them attend the next meeting to answer any questions or supplement any of the materials that we've already submitted. So in that light, I would like David Augusto from Draper and Kramer will talk briefly about what we're proposing, the nature of the product itself.
Thank you, Mr. Shaw. Good evening, Mr. Augusto.
Good evening. Thank you, Mayor and council members. I am from Draper and Kramer, Vice President of their Built to Suit program, and excited to be here in front of you. Draper and Kramer has been in the real estate business for over 100 years, family-owned business, and we take pride in everything that we do. So obviously, this would not be a deviation from that. We're excited because we think that this serves multiple purposes. Number one, it serves Walgreens' needs to keep up with the ability to provide the best service that they can for their customers. It also adds, obviously the store is going to add additional square footage versus the existing store. There will be a drive-through as well, and within the existing store, there are limitations to, obviously, the sales floor. Typical Walgreens, give or take, has about 18,000 products within the store. The existing store does not have that. So, therefore, from our perspective, additional sales floor creates additional sales dollars, of course, additional tax dollars, which benefits the community. And, from Walgreens' perspective, they just obviously need to keep moving forward. They provide, and the new stores are not what the old drugstores used to look like. Very high-tech, very energy efficient, extremely clean floors, great lighting. They're wellness centers. The pharmacists tend to now float the store and not stay behind the counter. It's a completely different shopping experience. So they want to serve Downers Grove. They want to serve this area. They've been here a good long time, and I think it's important from their perspective that this be approved, obviously to keep moving, to keep serving the area, which they really want to do.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Good evening, Mr. Hoffman.
Good evening. My name is Mike Hoffman with Teska Associates. We are a community planning and landscape architecture firm. Been in the Chicagoland area for 30-plus years, and we work for both municipalities and private clients, and this is one of our private clients tonight. What I was asked to do was take a look at the overall area. I spent some time looking at the site. Tom's given you a lot of detail on that, so I don't want to repeat what he's already told you about the specific property, but I do want to step back a little bit, look at the appropriateness of land use in this area, and talk about why we feel Walgreens is an appropriate land use in this area. To do that, we look at the site, we look at the physical characteristics. I went out and looked at the property, looked at the surrounding areas and surrounding properties. Also took a look at your codes and regulations. First thing we usually take a look at is your community's comprehensive plan. You've just recently adopted it, obviously. It's a fine document. Up at the beginning of the document, it talks about the purposes of it, which is to provide an overall vision for the community. It's not intended to get down to the parcel level. It's a broad kind of brush look at the overall community, and does suggest an appropriate pattern of development in terms of separating uses between commercial, residential, industrial, as well as looking at the supporting community facilities that the village needs to support your residents. When we look at your comprehensive plan, it's broken out into a series of chapters. One of the chapters that specifically relates to this property is an area that talks about commercial area plans and providing appropriate services and shopping opportunities for your residents of Downers Grove. It talks about the need for job growth, it talks about the need for tax base, and it talks about the need just to make sure that you're providing all the services that your residents need on a daily basis, and certainly Walgreens is one of those services that we all need on a regular basis, from pharmacy to convenience goods that the store would provide. This is kind of a blow-up of your comprehensive plan in terms of the area that we're talking about here along 63rd, and you can see that what the plan recognized was a changing pattern of land use and development and character along 63rd as 355 opened up and the interchange opened up and traffic increased along that roadway. And now you're looking at upwards of 30,000 cars a day going along 63rd Street, so the character of that area certainly has changed. Right now you have a number of residential uses on the north side of the street, but your comprehensive plan recognizes ultimately a transition to commercial use along this corridor by calling for low-intensity office use along the north side, and you can see the existing commercial development from the map there that is already existing on the south side of 63rd. This is just kind of a blow-up of the general area with our site being shown in yellow there, the red being areas that are developed for commercial use already. So you can see just from this, you've certainly got a lot of commercial use on the south two corners of this intersection of Woodward and 63rd, but you also just down the street have the existing Walgreens and the AutoZone also at a corner location, which would be similar to the corner that we're talking about here at Woodward on the north side of the street. Certainly residential uses to the north, and we do need to provide appropriate buffering, and Tom has talked about some of the provisions that Walgreens has made in that regard. So we've taken a look at your comprehensive plan. We need to translate that to a zoning category. How do we do that? We look at the different categories that you have in the village for commercial zoning. You've essentially got a range from B1 to B3, with B1 being very limited retail, focused on walkable, convenience-oriented goods. B2, which is what you see at the other corners in this area already, general retail category, citywide character at major intersections. This is a signalized intersection. I would consider this a major intersection with a lot of commercial development, particularly to the south along Woodward. And then it does talk about, in the B2 category, the need for providing screening, and that's some of the illustrations that Tom showed you a minute ago. So we've looked at the buffering around the property and made sure that what's being proposed by Walgreens will fit into the context of the area. The other categories there that we could consider B3, but that's more of a highway-oriented, more intense commercial use, so that really is not appropriate here. You also have an office research category, but that really seems to be more kind of corporate campus, much larger in scale and character than what is talked about here. So really the B2 category does seem to be the right one for what your comprehensive plan is showing in this area. And the B2 category does allow for a variety of fairly lower intensity retail and office type of uses. If you compare the differences between the office and the retail use, we think that the Walgreens would be, if anything, potentially a little bit less intense than some of the office uses that you could do in this area. The Walgreens use has a lot of traffic that is going to be coming to the site that's kind of pass-by traffic. You know, you're at work all day, you're driving home, you stop at Walgreens and pick up something on the way home, so you're not doing a separate trip for the Walgreens. Whereas if you had a separate office use, you would most likely be driving from your home to that location, so it might be kind of a new trip. So we think that traffic perspective and the need for additional parking potentially with office, because you could develop this site with more square foot of office space than we have for retail use proposed on here right now. Those two factors could potentially have an office development that's more intense than what Walgreens is talking about here. So from our perspective, while they both might be appropriate, the Walgreens actually may be a little bit less intense. So just to kind of quickly summarize what we've found in our analysis, certainly this property is commercial, given the increased traffic on 63rd, the trend of development in the area, and your comprehensive plan designation. B2, clearly, from my statements earlier, is the appropriate zoning for this site. It is at a major intersection, and the code does talk about providing for buffering, and we have done that through our site planning efforts here. And then why Walgreens? First of all, it provides services to the surrounding neighborhood. The residents in that area are already going to the existing Walgreens, but this will enhance their opportunities by providing a drive-through and providing opportunity for space for additional products and services that would be needed by the community. We think that the traffic impact for this use would potentially be less than some of the office uses that could be done here, and the applicant has done significant effort to provide buffering and kind of match the scale of the neighborhood with the proposal. So with that, I will wrap up my comments. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Hoffman. Appreciate that. The petitioner have any other individuals you want to speak at this point in time? I'm going to ask, this is a workshop. I almost loosened my tie, but I didn't. I'll ask the council whether you would like to ask questions of the petitioner at this point in time, since it's fresh in our minds, before entertaining public comment, or would you like to go ahead and hear what everyone else has to say and then ask questions at the end? Is there a preference? Is there any burning question anyone has of the petitioner right now?
I'd rather hear what everybody else has to say.
I'm sorry?
I'd rather hear what everybody else has to say in that.
Okay. That's fine with me. I just want to make sure that no one had a burning question they wanted to ask right now. I want to give you the opportunity. I know Mr. Casa from our Economic Development Corporation is here, as long as he's here. If you had a comment that you'd want to make, and then, folks, what we're going to do is, if you can bear with me a moment here, Mr. Casa, is we will entertain public comment questions on this item, and remember, all four items have been presented at once, so even though there's four pieces, we'll take comments and questions on them as a whole. Again, the protocol is to please come down to the podium, give us your name and address, and then we would love to hear from you. If there's a lot of people who are going to be speaking tonight, we would ask that you please try to keep it to about 5 minutes a person and try not to repeat one another. It doesn't look like from the line that's going to be a problem yet, but we'll see. So we gave everyone lots of time to get ready. Mr. Casa, good evening.
Thank you. Good evening, Mayor Tully and Commissioners. I want to briefly speak to the Walgreens project before you tonight. The Walgreens proposal to build a store at the northwest corner of 63rd and Woodward is consistent with the comprehensive plan's recommendation for moderate expansion of commercial developments around key intersections and heavily traveled roads. And as you've seen, the staff has recommended several conditions, including limiting the special use designation to a retail pharmacy with a drive-through, designating hours of operation and delivery hours, and prohibiting truck traffic on Woodward. Decisions like this are never easy, but the 63rd and Woodward intersection is directly across the street from one of our largest shopping centers. The commercial activity in the 63rd Street corridor will only grow and be enhanced over time. The Downers Grove Economic Development Corporation supports the staff report recommending approval. Thank you.
Thank you for your input. Folks, please come down, give us your name and address, and I would love to hear from you. And if anyone would like to sit down in the chairs that are open there and not stand, please be my guest. Good evening.
I'm Dee Gordon. I live at 6237 Pershing. I'm within the 250 feet of touching this project. I'd like to go ahead and hand you our documents. It's petitions with 280 names at this point. We're still in process, along with a newspaper article saying how Walgreens has hit kind of a bump in the road, losing 88 million customers with their loss of Express Scripts. And also, I guess basically we went through all of this with the Planning Commission, and they almost unanimously voted this down. The reasons that we have grave concerns is the Indian Trail Elementary School and the Downers Grove South High School are within a couple blocks proximity of this project with a lot of walking children. And so we had safety issues where that was concerned. Woodward is, going north of 63rd, a 2-lane residential road. My question is, by their own studies, they're saying 1,300 in and outs, 650 in, 650 out every day in this facility. and I'm going north on 63rd, and I want to turn left, there's not a turning lane. They don't have room to make a turning lane, and I'm blocking the traffic up into the intersection because I can't get in there because the school buses are coming down Woodward at school let out, or it's rush hour traffic. The proximity of these driveways to the intersection, going north on Woodward, turning westbound on 63rd, is a double turn lane coming right up to this driveway. You could not possibly go out and go east on that section, and same way coming out of the driveway on Woodward. It's an extremely dangerous intersection as it stands without adding 1,300 additional ins and outs. The amount of already commercial zoned property for lease, for rent, for sale in Downers Grove vacant is huge. That you would take a residential area and knock down homes to put additional seems absurd to me. I think that there are many more appropriate locations right across the street between the mobile and the restaurant. There's plenty of room for a drive-through fancy Walgreens, and you're still leaving the one that's in existence closed and shuttered for lease, as they did down at 63rd and Janes. Did the same thing, put in the brand spank new one on 75th Street Walgreens, and here still sits shuttered for lease the old Walgreens they abandoned. I think this is outrageous. The main issue also is, say your future use plans in the next 10, 15 years is low-intensity commercial property. Walgreens is not low intensity. It's not the same amount of traffic or volume as a office building or dental building, which my understanding is that's what is part of the classification of low intensity. This is a retail property with their proposed 8 to 10 driveway now, but in the Planning Commission, they originally came out saying that they wanted to amend later to a 24-hour drive-through. They also have the red box thing, which would be used after hours or whatever. So these were questions that we had that we feel this is an inappropriate location for this type of property. It is not low intensity. It is certainly a retail property, and there's more appropriate locations for it. I think that's it. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Gordon. Good evening, welcome.
Hello. My name is Michelle Shelley. I'm at 6215 Pershing Avenue. Well, I read this already a few times, but we'll do it again. I did a little MapQuest, and we have 28 pharmacies within a 5-mile radius of this location. We also have, in a 3-mile radius, we have 18 pharmacies. 10 of them are Walgreens in the 5-mile. 8 of them have drive-through, and 2 of them are 24 hours. Cass alone, there's 3. We have 7 Jewel Oscos. 3 stores are open 24 hours, and 1 has a 24-hour pharmacy. 4 CVS. All have drive-throughs, and 1 of them is 24-hour. And that one also has flu shots and photo options and a 1-minute clinic. 3 Dominick's, all with pharmacy shots. 2 Walmarts, both with pharmacies, 1 24-hour store, a Target, and within a 3-mile radius, you have 7 Walgreens, 3 Oscos, 3 CVS's, 1 Target, 1 Dominick's, and 1 Walmart. 6 of all those stores are 24-hour. And now I have something, a man named Joe Vega. He is sick. I don't know if I can read what he wanted me to read, or if I should give you the copies.
Whatever you would prefer.
Okay, it's not my own words, so I'm
That's fine, we
expecting-
understand that you're introducing a statement from someone else into the record, that's fine.
It'll be choppy. My name is Joe Vega, and I have lived at 5813 Woodward Avenue in unincorporated area for more than 25 years. I would like to make the following comments regarding the annexation and rezoning of the northwest corner of 63rd and Woodward Avenue use as a Walgreens drugstore. Comment 1. The proposed site is currently zoned single-family residence in DuPage County. This is surrounded on 3 sides by existing residents. Woodward Avenue is a 2-lane residential street. Since all the property to the east and the west of this site is part of Downers Grove, with the exception of the auto zone, is residential. It would appear that changing the zoning of the proposed site would not be in harmony with the density and land use design as required by the municipal code. Now, he printed this off, so it's whatever you had up there. Do you need a copy of it? That he gave me for you, of what you have that he printed off today that says that the existing Walgreens that's there is marked residential with a special permit. So I guess he said that means if anybody else were to use it, they would also need a special permit. So that's what he has. I don't know if you want me to, you want it?
Sure.
Okay.
We'll
That's
be
what
happy
we
to
got
take it.
today. Comment 2, Woodward Avenue is a hilly street and southbound traffic cannot be seen until it crosses the crest of the hill about a block north of 63rd Street. It then comes to the end of a slippery slope as it enters 63rd, and he means slippery because as soon as it rains or it's icy, you're going right into 63rd. Any cars either entering or exiting a proposed commercial driveway on Woodward Avenue from Walgreens face the potential of being hit by oncoming traffic, which they cannot readily see, especially if they were making left-hand turns. So he went out and took pictures. So I hope I have those here and didn't leave them. Yeah. So he took 3, and I guess so you can see that you'd be facing north on Woodward. Okay, and the Lyle Township Highway Department has recognized potential traffic problems and has stated that they will prohibit truck traffic from using Woodward, using the Woodward driveway. Comment 3, the Meadowbrook Shopping Center across the street is an old center and badly needs new life. It is currently in bankruptcy, and the front half of the parking lot has been unused and is deteriorating. My suggestion is that the village encourage Walgreens to build their building on an outlet of this center, which is already has curb cuts and access from 3 streets, that they could save a lot of money by utilizing common parking with the rest of the tenants and not have to pay for new storm retention, etc. They would also have much better visibility on 63rd Street without being crammed between houses, as they would be on the proposed site. A new tenant such as Walgreens would be a major incentive for a real estate developer to purchase the center from bankruptcy and renovate it, which would enhance the area. I think such a plan would be a win-win situation for everyone. And he also made a copy of the Google, I think, and where it would be a good idea to put the site. So, thank you. Oh,
Thank you.
here, these are, you can probably have them all around.
Thank you, Ms. Shelley. Good evening, ma'am. Welcome.
Well, I missed the last couple of meetings.
May I interrupt you for the record? May we please have your name and address?
Oh, yes. My name is Jean Young. I live at 6100 Woodward, and I've lived there for 36 years. So, although I don't sound like I've lived there for 36 years, I have been here in Downers for 40 years. 41 years, right, Wally? Yeah. Anyway,
Thank you, Ms. Young.
the Meadowbrook Shopping Centre, to me, I've heard what everybody has to say, and I'm with them. The Meadowbrook Shopping Centre seems to be an ideal place to put a Walgreens. There's a big empty spot. It will bring more business into the Meadowbrook Shopping Centre. The other shopping centre, Target and Dominic's, already has 2 pharmacies. So that seems to be getting sort of dilapidated. So I agree with the prior speaker. So I really don't have much more to add, but that intersection on 63rd and Woodward is a big pain, to put it mildly, because of the traffic. So it would add more traffic to that area. And Meadowbrook Shopping Centre already has several entrances that you can get into the centre. I know Walgreens like corners. They seem to have a lot of their businesses on corners. So I guess that's what they really like. But this area is residential for a long time, and you need residents, people in the area, to buy what Walgreens is selling. I use it all the time. I'm always in Walgreens, so
I'm sure
I
you're
like
thrilled to
the
hear
store.
that.
I like the store, and I just think it's the wrong place to put it. It just seems doesn't really make sense to me to put it there when there seems to be so many other available spots. So I haven't done any research. I just know from living there what the situation is. And we have had drainage problems over the years, especially in the intersection of Woodward and 61st. So I don't know as having another building is going to help with the drainage problems. There is not enough drainage in the area, because that's a whole different issue. Anyway, thank you for listening to me.
Thank you for your comments, Ms. Young. Good evening, sir.
Good evening. My name is Don Weiss. I live at 7050 Newport in Woodridge. I am the son of Helen Weiss, the owner of the property at 6298 Woodward Avenue in Downers Grove. At present, my mother is in a nursing home with dementia. She has not been declared legally imbalanced or incompetent and that. And I have the matter in the courts at present. It's been in court for almost 2 years pertaining to the ownership of that property. And that I have here a copy of my papers that I have filed, and it's in courtroom 2009. I also have part of my mother's trust showing that the property is to be inherited by me solely, exactly at 6298 Woodward Avenue in Downers Grove. My sister Shirley St. Vincent has no authority at all under her POA to make any type of agreement to sell this property without my mother being declared incompetent. And this has been brought up, and she has tried to cover it up all the way across the board. There is a court order that she do so, and that. And as far as the traffic goes, I grew up in that area. I know a lot of these folks here. I'm 65 years old. I grew up in that area when it was there was a dirt 2-lane highway. Traffic situation there, you take your life in your hand across the street. That's why my mother's mailbox was set back a ways, and that when they widened Woodward Avenue. My father used to live at 2134 63rd Street. He used to have to come in and come from the east, and when he left, he'd have to go west to turn around Meadowbrook Shopping Center to go east, and that. The traffic study that's been done with that, with all due respect to these developers, is fine and dandy. Same with the village. But ask the folks here, go sit out there and watch it. You'll see people take their lives in their hands, and to put a Walgreens there on property that people don't want, and actually, you don't even have the clearance without my mother's property there. And with an illegal litigation in the courts, and my mother not being declared incompetent, you're stymied. You kind of run into a roadblock. And this has been informed to all parties involved. First of all, the Village of Downers Grove. I met with Dave Augusta and his staff, which are very pleasant to deal with and very friendly. And now I've informed the village. And if you'd like a copy of the papers here, showing the papers I filed, along with part of my mother's trust, I'd be glad to give it to your members.
Actually, if we probably just write down the case number, and that'll
It's
tell us
already got
everything
the
we need
case
to
number and
know.
everything else. You're free to have the
Mr.
copy.
Baker can jot down the case number. That'll tell us everything we need to know. And then you can have your document back, because that looks like an original to me, and I wouldn't want to hang on to it.
But I thought I would inform you that that's why my sister Shirley St. Vincent is not present in the courtroom. And I found out also that an attorney here in Downers Grove signed my mother's name.
Yeah, gotcha. But I think we get the point.
All right.
Thank you. And obviously, what's on the court file is what's in the court file.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Weiss. Good evening, ma'am.
Mr. Mayor, Council, I'm Marceline Ricker. I live at 6120.
I'm sorry, ma'am, I didn't hear your last name.
Ricker. I live
Good
at
evening.
6120 Woodward Avenue, and I've lived there since 1973. All right. One of the issues that has not been brought up, other than the fact that there's no sidewalks on Woodward Avenue and there are children walking back and forth to school on this particular street every day, and the fact that there's like 9 buses that come through every day, every school day, has been drainage. Mrs. Young mentioned it a little bit. We have had a drainage problem, and the county addressed it finally because of the topography of the land. The drainage was done towards the large sewer on 63rd Street. Sewers were put in, all kinds of things were done. Before this was done, there were several backyards that were lakes after heavy rains. And when we had our big storms, they were lakes for days. We are worried about drainage. We are worried about safety of the children. And we are worried about traffic also, because we happen to have people who drive through all the time. I notice people on Webster Street, you're going to be doing some kind of traffic mitigation for them. We have no, since our street is the township line, we have wild, different people doing things here. We get plowed by everybody or not plowed by everybody. We get salted by everybody or not salted by everybody. We have traffic we're supposed to have no trucks. We get trucks. 18-wheelers sometimes come through. We are supposed to have 25-mile-an-hour speed limit. I think these people are dyslexic. They must think it's 52. And they completely ignored stop signs. If you look in the Plan Commission report, they have a section where they did a traffic study and noted the fact that most of the stop signs on the street, we have stop signs on every intersection, were ignored completely. So if you put more traffic on that road, it's going to be more dangerous for everybody. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ms. Ricker. Good evening.
It is at that. My name is Guy Bronson. My address is 5904 Downers Drive, and I'm the precinct committeeman for the eastern side of Woodward Avenue. And my constituents that live along Woodward are concerned backing out of their driveways to an increased traffic. The exit driveway for Walgreens, one of them comes right up into his driveway, and he's concerned about that in addition to the increase in traffic. One of the things that the Planning Commission was a list of accidents at 63rd and Woodward, but it was conspicuous that my accident was not on that list. So I want to make you go back through your statistics and make sure every accident was included. But again, you have problems with traffic, you have problems coming down that hill onto, or even up that hill during icy and inclement weather. And the other problem is I can't see you getting a truck from the left-hand turn lane on 63rd Street into the Walgreens parking lot when you have 2 lanes of left-hand traffic coming from north on Woodward to west on 63rd. So that would be a problem that we look at for that. So I want to thank you for taking my input and look forward to dealing with you.
Thank you, Mr. Bronson. Good evening.
Good evening. My name is Liz Chaplin. I live at 5623 Pershing Avenue, Downers Grove. I'd like to thank the council for giving the residents the opportunity to express our concerns tonight. I just wanted to say briefly that I believe it was about 2 years ago the village denied a request for a Starbucks at the corner of 63rd and Leonard, basically because the traffic would flow into a residential area. So if you can go back to your meetings about approximately 2 years ago and check on that, that might give you a reference to look into why this Walgreens should not be accepted by the council. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Chaplin. Evening, sir.
Evening, Mr. Mayor, Commissioners. My name is Frank Frieda Jr. I live at 2140 63rd Street in Downers Grove. and I think this should be accepted. And one of the reasons I believe that is my house has been for sale for almost 2 years, and more than half of the people that have looked at it have said, well, it's a nice house, but we don't want to be there because of the traffic. The traffic has increased, and I don't believe that it's appropriate for residential any longer. And that's not counting the people that looked at the map and said, well, it's a main street, I don't want to go there. So I think it should be considered that perhaps this area would be better suited to be some manner of commercial, because people that have children aren't going to want to live on 63rd Street with all the traffic that's been mentioned. And drainage issues, I'm the lowest one in the neighborhood except for my neighbor, and we do get some water, but I've never had a leak, and if I'm lower than the rest, I would think the water would come to me. But, I thank you for your time. I urge you to accept this proposal. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. Good evening, sir.
My name is Randy Owens. I live at 5900 Pershing. In addition to everything that's been stated here, I'm not going to go into saying it again, but there was one question I asked at the first meeting after looking at all their designs. I've seen 18-wheelers going into the current Walgreens, and they have all kinds of issues with turning around and just making it through by the Walgreens. Now they're talking about having 18-wheelers going into this new facility, and I asked them, what is going to be the traffic pattern for 18-wheelers delivering into that one? The only way in is going to be go in and turn right where all the parked cars are going to be at, going around, they're trying to come in behind the building. Or if they go in the other way and go straight north and then turn right, go behind the building, now they're going to be going out on Woodward. I haven't heard that question addressed. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Owens. Good evening.
My name is Patty Gruber. I live at 6216 Pershing Avenue. And I would just like to address the gentleman who said he can't sell his home on 63rd Street. 5 years ago, there were 4 brand-new properties built, homes built on the corner of Pershing up to the middle of 63rd Street, and I believe like 2 homes after that would be the area where they want to build this Walgreens. Those homes all sold within a few months after being on the market, even though they are on 63rd Street. And in fact, a year and a half ago, the house resold for over $300,000 on 63rd. So my point is that this is still a desirable area for people to live residentially. I think if, if it would be better to sell these homes so that maybe a builder could build residential homes rather than commercial. This way we could keep it residential. There's still a demand to live in the area. In fact, at the Planning Commission back in December, there was a gentleman who was looking to build and to put 2 parcels together in that area. So people do like the idea of the large lots, the wooded areas. We feel like we're in the country. It's still in demand for people to live in. So I know, the housing market is terrible the last few years, but those homes still did sell within the last 5 years, even though they're on 63rd. So I just wanted to mention that. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Gruber. Good evening, ma'am.
Good evening. My name is Oma Selly. I live at 6157 Pershing. I've lived there for over 30 years. I was instrumental in the county coming in for the drainage project. I have grave concerns about covering, 1.9 acres with asphalt. That, however, was not what I intended to say. Mrs. Ricker commented on the fact that Woodward Avenue is the dividing line between Downers Grove Township and Lyle Township. As I understand it, the village would annex 290 feet of Woodward Avenue and patrol that 290 feet. the west side of Woodward would be patrolled by Lisle Township, the east side by Downers Grove Township. People in this area have asked repeatedly for more traffic control there. We're told that the townships don't have the manpower to have people there to stop this speeding. And when you look at the plan that we saw, they're going to put 25-mile-an-hour speed limit on the pavement or on the asphalt. They don't read signs now. How is that going to slow down the traffic? And traffic is a problem on Woodward. I can't walk on Woodward. And kids, I have a lot more sense about traffic than kids do when they're on their way to school and excited with their friends. This is a problem. And where is the patrolling for the speed limits going to come from? It will be increased traffic, a lot of increased traffic. I hate to admit it, but I was just about in an accident going into the Walgreens on Belmont. I signaled, there was oncoming traffic, there was traffic behind me, and I almost got rear-ended. And that's a two-lane. Belmont is two-lane. Belmont is four-lane. Woodward is two-lane. Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Selly. Other questions or comments from any members of the audience with respect to these four items? Okay, not seeing any, I will then open it up for discussion, questions, comments from members of the Village Council. Commissioner Schnell?
I actually have a question, probably most answered by Walgreens. I mentioned to the manager today, I had some concerns about how truck traffic was going to circulate throughout the development itself. And do we have the slide that you gave us that shows the truck traffic? No?
We don't have it as a slide, we have it on the materials
Piece of
you were
paper.
provided.
And I know it's in your little booklet that you gave us, if there's a way that you could walk through it, I still can't comprehend how there isn't going to be conflict, particularly when you turn in from 63rd Street, make the right-hand turn, go around, there's a conflict, or at least close proximity to the people who are going through the drive-through. And then the people from the drive-through have to exit west, come down south, and then exit out onto 63rd Street. They're going to be going past where the trucks are making deliveries. So what I'm trying to get is a better understanding of how you're going to deal with conflict between the people who are shopping at Walgreens, how the trucks are going to be going through the site itself, and how you would handle exiting onto 63rd Street. So I don't know, my guess is that's more a Walgreens question than it is this.
We will put their diagram up on the screen for everybody. You've given us enough time to get it up on the computer.
Sorry, long question.
And then,
but will it be animated?
So we would ask Walgreens to maybe walk us through if they could.
Yeah, perhaps if someone from the petitioner would like to, Mr. Augusto?
Okay, so
Mr.
this-
Schnell, their question?
If you could,
It needs to be oriented, it's,
Yeah.
needs to be rotated 90 degrees to the left. And my guess is the trucks aren't going to be going through there when it's full of people shopping.
Well, it's 8 to 9
8 to 9
o'clock.
p.m.
I mean, so it could be. As you know, I always have safety concerns with site plans.
Right.
So.
We're going to try to rotate it real quick. to
That's
get the-
okay. We could do a commercial.
I was just thinking the same thing.
We were unable to rotate it, so if, we'll just reorient everybody. 63rd Street is now on the left. That's 63rd Street on the left, and Woodward is to the bottom of the slide.
So north is to the right of that diagram.
That's correct.
Right.
So one thing I do want to mention is that for the trailer, there's 4 deliveries per week. So that's something that it's not every single day. I think that's important as well. And usually the deliveries, give or take, for the existing store are at, I think, 2 o'clock in the afternoon and about 8 o'clock in the afternoon. So it's 2 a day. It's 2 for 2 days during the week for the bigger trucks. What we did here was our attempt to try to limit the truck from actually going and making this turn. We thought that maybe we could engineer a plan that allows the truck to come right around at obviously at a slow speed. There's a barrier here. The truck fits. These lines physically show the fact that the truck does fit. If these lines were, say, crossing in here or up in there, that would mean that the truck does not fit. We wouldn't have supplied, we wouldn't have supplied this to the village if in fact this didn't work. So the trailer does make it through. Now, the plan that we presented to you today shows a slightly different movement for the truck, where the truck actually comes here, turns on Woodward, and then turns in and goes around like this. Now, when the truck is at the delivery point, which is right here, it parks, it stops, and it turns off its engine. That engine isn't running. And then it'll deliver, as long as it takes, 2 hours or whatever, and then when it's finished, it just leaves. So this does allow for the truck to make that turn without interfering with the folks here. And obviously, the folks that are in the drive-through the truck isn't going to be blocking them here. The truck will be back, it would be right in here. So they can just come right around it.
It's the same, Marilyn, if it helps, it's the same, not the drive around the building, but the interaction between the drive-through and the dock and the exiting drive-through people is the same as Ogden and Main. And we actually sign it that way because we prevent folks from leaving the Ogden and Main drive-through and heading east. That's the exact same arrangement.
The one in, well, I'm more familiar with Ogden Lane, but it's still, it's a concern. Plus, you said something that I think is against one of the conditions that the Planning Commission set, was the fact that there is not supposed to be any truck traffic on Woodward at all.
To the north of our site. In other words,
That's not how I read it, but,
well,
okay, I'm not.
that's fine. I mean, either way, we can do it either way, I guess is what I'm saying. The truck, but what you're saying is, or your concern is that the truck wouldn't come through, and what we're saying is that in fact it does make it, and it's able to come around.
My concern more is with a conflict, or not a conflict, but if someone has a sick kid in the car, and they're going through, and that's a lot of what, people use the drive-through for. So you're going through the drive-through, you're getting medicine for your kid, the kid's screaming, you're distracted, and a semi-trailer or a big truck is coming, there's a possibility of conflict. And I'm just concerned about, if there's a barrier, whatever it is there, so that it's as safe as possible.
Yeah. There is a barrier right here. This is a canopy, so there's a barrier here. And I will say that...
Like the one at Main and...
Yeah, I will say that every Walgreens store, for the most part, this is prototypical. So this is throughout the system. It's not unique to just this site. I mean, what happens here where the truck comes around is not unique to the site. It's at every... And the stores in the city of Chicago are substantially different. But if you look at a prototypical store like this, it's what is commonplace from a site plan standpoint.
Okay. Speaking about the store at Main and Ogden, I know that when it first went in, we received complaints from residents about garbage pickup being very early in the morning and the close proximity of that to the residents. I would like to see, if at all possible, some sort of time constraints put on when garbage pickup could stop. I know right now it's 6 a.m. because that's when it can be done in a residential area, but that's on the street, not next to someone's window. So if it'd be 7 o'clock or a more realistic time, 7 probably being realistic for garbage
Yeah.
pickup as well as
Right.
residents sleeping.
And this is the area for garbage here, so it's, the distance to the next home, it's quite far.
But you have a garbage truck that has to go around
Sure, yeah,
abutting a
yeah.
home. So, I mean, and I think.
That's fine, I mean, that's fine, it's not,
You know,
yeah.
But that to me is again, something that's important. And so, can I get clarification, I guess, from our staff? Reading what the planning commission said, I thought it said there was no truck traffic allowed on Woodward itself. And the assumption I think they're making is it's up to their site, they can. Can you clarify?
Yes, I can. Condition number 4 of the draft special use ordinance reads, "No truck traffic is allowed on Woodward Avenue," and it goes on to describe that no truck traffic is allowed on Woodward. One of the things we've asked Walgreens to look at is narrowing down some of the drive aisles to add more green space onto the site. And if they were to narrow down some of the drive aisles, then the trucks would have to come in off of Woodward in order to make the turning radius. That's what I understand it to be.
Right.
So there's really a couple options on the table. Site plan number 1 with no truck traffic at all on Woodward, and that leaves a very wide drive aisle on the east side. Or site plan number 2 with a narrowed down drive aisle on the east side, more green space, and then trucks would have to traverse Woodward Avenue up to the driveway on the north side of the site.
What does that do as far as safety of kids walking to and from school? I know there's going to be a sidewalk, but apparently this is a walking route to Indian Trail. So is that going to, if all of a sudden you have trucks on Woodward, is that going to create a safety concern for kids who are walking to school? They're Downers North is high school kids. We're talking grade school kids here.
Yeah. Well, yeah, and again, I would just like to mention again that there's 4 trucks that come into the site every week, so it's not every day. And obviously, the travel distance that the truck is going to, if in fact it were to turn on Woodward, is a short distance. It's what is it, 200 feet or so? It's less than 200 feet. Right, plus we are adding the sidewalk that does not exist today. So in essence, if the kids are using Woodward to get to school, there's no sidewalk there today. We are adding that out in front of the store because we think that's important as well. So I guess that's what I would say. In essence, you know, it's 2 trucks a week. I'm sorry, it's 2 days a week, 2 trucks. And we're adding the additional sidewalk. And the distance is about 180 to 200 feet, give or take, off of 63rd Street.
Okay, one last question. Are we, I thought at one time it was, and I don't know whether I read this in the planning commission or not, that we were going to restrict left turn lanes onto Woodward, left turns onto Woodward. That is not, at least I didn't read that as a condition that the planning commission said. Is that a truism or not?
We're going to ask Tom to answer that question.
Come on down.
A left turn restriction is something that we have asked the petitioner if they would be willing to live with. They can answer for themselves. I think they said yes to me. But it was not part of the original restrictions placed by the...
But it could be put into
Yes.
any restrictions that we would write.
Now, the one thing that I think was answered at the previous meeting was that left turn, if you're coming out of the store and going north on Woodward, odds are the person making that turn is going to be somebody who is from the neighborhood. If you're not from the neighborhood, you're not going to make that turn. You're going to go to 63rd Street. So in essence, in essence, from our traffic study, which was done by Gawalt Hamilton, a professional engineering firm, the thought is that if we limit that, you know, you're limiting the actual resident from going north. So Is it a possibility? Sure. Walgreens does like to, the biggest issue is that Walgreens likes to make it as easy as possible for their customers. If we start limiting things, that does make a, does it make a change? Not necessarily. They just want you to get in as easy as possible, and they'd like you to get out as easy as possible. That's usually why they have the dual entrances, and usually why they have them so far apart. But that's, our thought was that if we do that, if it's necessary, I think we can, I think we can make it, yeah.
Okay. I mean, again, I think there's a lot of food for thought in here, but we've done this on several occasions where you need to put more traffic on a small residential street. And to me, it makes some sense to at least consider it as a council. So that's fine. All right, that's all for now.
If you could hold on, sir, we're at the point now where we're going to have council members ask questions. I'm not using Mr. Augusta behind you.
It's just, I don't, you've ever driven a truck going through all those parking places, looking for the turning radius, you're going to have troubles taking a truck through the route they just.
I think there's going to be lots of questions about the truck route, so that's been duly noted. But we're at the point now where we're going to let the council members who've been sitting here listening to what everyone has said ask some questions. So thank you. If you could please be patient. Commissioner Neustadt?
Thank you, Mayor. I have some concerns about a lot of the things. Traffic movement, the abandoned store, existing store, what's going to happen down there. I'm going to shift over to the other entrance on 63rd Street. I think I would like to clarify the information about truck traffic on Woodward. It seems to me that that's an easier turn for a larger truck to go down Woodward into the site kind of in a straight line than navigate through the parking lot and through the parking spaces. If one person parks, not appropriately in a parking spot, that could change those lines pretty quick there, especially by the handicap section of the parking lot. I'm concerned about the traffic movement out of the western exit onto 63rd Street. We've talked about no left turn into the neighborhood. My concern is a left turn out of the site going eastbound on 63rd Street. There's a lot of lanes of traffic there, and it is a very busy street. I think we heard 30,000 cars on that street. A simple preference for me would be that, no left turn there and some sort of traffic control device to have a right turn in, right turn out. In a quick drive around town today, I saw a lot of examples of that up and down 63rd Street and some other commercial corridors that helps kind of guide folks in and out. My concern really would be for the Walgreens traffic on their property. If there's a person trying to turn left out of the site, there'll be a queuing or a backup of cars into the parking lot that will limit the transmission of patrons in and out of the parking lot. So that's something that I would like a little bit of information on, if that's a possibility. I don't disagree with one of the residents who spoke about the closed-up store in Woodridge. There's one in Woodridge, and I'm sure there's others that have been moved. And for me, hearing from the Economic Development Corporation is a positive, but to see another commercial corridor and a building left abandoned, hopefully not for long if this does go forward. But that's an issue for me, and I don't know if Walgreens has any plans or has any ideas they'd like to share with us on what that use would be, but that would be something I'd be very interested in, so we don't have a repeat of what happened down in Woodridge, which seems to be a waste of prime space.
Well, I can tell you that Walgreens doesn't own that building. It's owned by a very experienced real estate owner who's done a lot of retail work. And I can't speak for him, but my guess is that my guess is that they would get something there fairly quickly. It's a good area. It just doesn't fit what Walgreens is willing to do. So, or what they're looking to do moving forward.
That's a lease that has approximately 24 months left to run. The developers of that site, as David pointed out, are quite sophisticated. They do a lot. They're very experienced retail guys. They know that this is no longer a state-of-the-art Walgreens. They know that they really cannot redevelop that site and give any continuity to the Walgreens operation or put the drive-through in. So my guess is that they have been doing a lot of hard thinking about it and that they would be prepared to convert that to something. They're way, way too smart and sophisticated to leave that sit at that location.
Okay. I'm sure Mayor Tully is going to talk about standards and the uses and all the different things we're actually looking at. There's a whole bunch of things here, but the first one really is the annexation. I think we have some information in our packet from the attorney about that property dispute issue that we heard about from tonight. I'd really like some clarification on that. As soon as we can get that would be very helpful. You know, it's a big deal. It's a big change in a neighborhood, and I think change sometimes is met with some resistance. There are a lot of things happening on this site. I will say that our village has done a great job. If you look at, say, the CVS at Main Street and 63rd Street, when that proposal was approved, we had a lot of conversations about screening, landscaping, lights, the amount of speaker time there was available for the drive-through, and those are all things that we're really good at in putting a retail store close to a neighborhood area. So on those aspects, I'm comfortable with the proposed plan here with the fencing, the screening, and how we've worked with the drive-throughs close to homes. I do still have those concerns about the traffic in the area. I'm in that area a lot for my day job, and there is some weird traffic lanes on 63rd Street. The double left turn is an issue. I know that we could sign it, we could do lots of things, but people drive the way they drive, and there's nothing that we're ever going to do to fix that. Obviously, enforcement from our police departments, the county, and other agencies that are in the area would be helpful there, but you know, I still have some more questions. I'm contemplating this one. I know it's a big deal, and I think having some more of those answers and looking at that, both those left turn out onto Woodward, and then no left turns out of both entrances or exits, or something that I'm going to look at for information for before we vote. For now, that's all I have, Mayor.
Thank you.
Yeah, I'll
Commissioner
go.
Durkin?
Yeah, I'll go. First and foremost, I support this. We'll just get that out real quick. I see this as an economic opportunity for us to redevelop our north side of 63rd Street with the center that's having financial difficulties. I think you had hit it on the head when you had mentioned there's only 24 months left on the lease, so I don't think we'll have an empty building. What is the construction time period for this to get through? Probably within 2 years, or you're probably on a timeline, the sooner the better for you, right?
Yeah, no, I mean, if it does go through, we're actually thinking of having it open by fall of this year.
Wow. Okay. You know, I think the life, as we know, Woodward Avenue has changed. I think it's changed, and I think it really started with the Sam's Club on Woodward and 75th, and as you continue south, you have the Costco and all of that. So I think it's just overall has changed. So I would not want to see any trucks north of the north property line on Woodward of this Walgreens. I think it's imperative that the trucks have the safest route, and I understand there's children, school kids, but I also know there's no sidewalks now in that area. So I would support no trucks further than the north property line, if that makes sense to you.
Yeah.
You know, there was a lot of opposition a couple years ago with the proposed CVS on 63rd and Main Street. You know, there was a lot of public outcry on that, especially with the distance of the existing residential to the store with the redevelopment of that center, and that's really just redeveloped that whole area. And I know we worked through it. I speak to a number of the people that live back there, and they're very pleased with how that whole thing went, even though they had issues at the beginning. So I support this. You know, I look forward to it. You know, just to highlight a couple things. This store is going to generate anywhere between $7.5 to $8 million. A very conservative basis that results $75,000 to $80,000 in municipal sales tax revenue, with an additional $20,000 because we're home rule sales tax. So that's $100,000 that we're talking about here. And I think it's an economic engine for us to redevelop that shopping center to the south that's in ruins, in my opinion.
I just want to say the typical Walgreens is $9 million in sales. The new ones. The new ones.
Okay. So then we can get updated sales numbers on that. And that's all I have.
Thank you, Commissioner. Commissioner Rankin?
A number of residents, expressed concerns about drainage, and I know that you
have addressed that, so would you mind sharing that with
Sure, sure.
the audience?
Yeah, yeah, I hit the wrong button. What we're going to be doing is actually, obviously right now, the drainage that is there flows down from the surface, from the ground. We're actually going to be sort of right in here creating an underground holding tank, actual underground storage water tank that over time the water will then dissipate into the sewer systems. In the past, what we've done is, in an area like this, we just have created what's called an above-ground detention pond. For us, that would be easier to do because of cost, but in this situation, we want to make it as easy and as obviously economic friendly as possible. So, you want
Just let me start off by saying, we are the downstream owner.
Right.
The water flows on our property,
Right.
we're not backing it up, sending it upstream.
Right.
Which really sets the stage for that.
Right. So therefore, because of that, we're going to have, according to village code, we're going to have proper storage capacity to store quite a bit of water, which doesn't exist today.
I think that was all of my questions. I just don't believe that homes are the appropriate use for 63rd anymore. Our, comprehensive plan has indicated that, and there are pretty much 3 corners already. We have 2 commercial corners, and then the third corner is an industrial use. I think it's appropriate that this would be a retail commercial area. So if I think of additional questions, I'll
Thank you.
type them. Thanks.
Thanks, Commissioner. Commissioner Barnett?
Thank you, Mayor. At least on the surface, this seems like an appropriate use for the parcel to me, parcels, but it's in the details, of course, that we make it work or not. Some of my colleagues, Commissioner Schnell and Commissioner Neustadt in particular, talked about some of those turn restrictions. It should come as no surprise that I'm a fan of such things. My colleagues up here and folks that watch our meetings, I'm not a big fan of signage because it's so easy to blow it off. And traffic in a neighborhood is a real concern all over our community. So things that we can do to mitigate that, if they're right turn in, right turn out kinds of things, I think that's entirely appropriate. I think it's necessary. Anything that would increase traffic northbound on Woodward to me is generally a bad thing. We have evidence of similar kinds of things throughout town, as Commissioner Neustadt pointed out. One thing, a couple of data things I think I'd like from staff, if we could, over the next week or however many weeks we talk about this. I'd like to see what site plans we approved for Ogden and Maine Walgreens, and also for CVS at Ogden and Fairview. If you guys had your traffic consultant, I guess I'd like to see and hear what they had to say about those turn restrictions.
I will drag them out of bed next time.
Okay. I'd like them to be here, and I'd like them to, between now and then, give some commentary on the effect of that. Also, some of those Starbucks proceedings, can we get whatever we had on those and circulate them around this group again? And looking at some of the Google Maps for the area, it doesn't look like there's sidewalks for miles. Do we have, I know there's some unincorporated aspects here, but do we have, relative to Indian Trail, any kind of sort of official commentary from Safe Routes to Schools and our long-range sidewalk planning that talks about that? If so, I'd like to see and review that too. I think Manager Fieldman mentioned, and certainly something that came out of these to me, anything we can do to narrow up that drive on the north side, the more space we can put between residents and developments like this, the better. The space itself is good, but the opportunity for increased landscape is, I think, pretty important. So I don't know what, if anything, can be done, but I'd certainly like to think you guys were working on trying to maximize that space.
This space right here?
Exactly.
Yeah, this is the new site plan where we added an additional 5 feet to the previous site plan, so there is an additional 5 feet that's been added.
Is that this, sir? Is that the
That's correct.
Can we get a dimension version of that?
Sure.
And then, is that, no, here.
You know, the dimension, I think, is there.
I didn't see that second page.
Yeah, it's okay.
I had a question too. Tom made a comment early on about cross-access for future west developments. What exactly are we talking? Are we talking about limited curb cut, things like we're doing in Ogden?
Yes, the comprehensive plan recommends weaving future parking lots together so that you minimize movements onto 63rd Street, so that you could traverse parking lots should they develop further west on 63rd Street. So we've added a condition that would require an easement that would allow and facilitate a parking lot connection should the property to the west develop.
That's kind of that's what I was hoping you were going to say. And it's probably in here somewhere, but is this combined parcel, should this go forward, large enough to require, to be above some of the county requirements on lot size, parcel size and storage pools? We're talking about stormwater storage. Is it above or below the waiver once it's combined?
The current one or the soon-to-be
Yeah.
adopted one?
The one in play at the moment.
Detention is required due to the size of this development.
So it's above the threshold.
It is well above the threshold, yes.
I generally think it's a pretty decent idea, but I'd like to review all those things and spend some more time going through that.
We will get that information to you.
One last subject that's on my list. I don't know what, if any, I couldn't really tell from the renderings, but rooftop screening.
Yeah.
Is that going to be 360 degrees?
360 degrees.
That's pretty important too, in terms of mitigating the effect on the neighborhood. Thank you.
Thank you. Commissioner Waldeck.
Thank you, Mayor. First off, I read all the material from the Planning Commission. I thank them for their work. I thank the residents for coming out, their input, and the fine presentation. Obviously, if there had to be a decision tonight, we got all this reading material, so we got a lot to look at. Fortunately, this is a workshop because I haven't made any decision yet at all, be honest. I took a lot of notes, and the other problem is I generally can't read my writing either, so so bear with me. When I look at 63rd and Woodward, and it's not far from my neighborhood, we go through it quite a bit. I look at the southeast corner. It's retail. It seems like it belongs. Don't go in there much, but there's something about that intersection. So it would seem that in a planning situation, that the four corners should be retail or office space, and it seems to make sense for an area like that. However, there are problems, and I guess this is probably a question for Mr. Dabriner.
Just making sure you're still paying attention.
Yeah, and it's not something, it's actually a future question. That intersection is such a pain right now. If I was a planner and had free reign, how could I possibly improve that intersection?
Well, you'd start with
But not with a bridge. I mean, let's keep it all level.
You'd start with a cornfield.
We only have 5 minutes.
Or underpasses and overpasses, none of that. But is there anything that can be done with that intersection that could improve that situation? That's a major problem for me. I noticed, in the reports, there was, in that intersection, there were 20 accidents. And we've talked about doing traffic calming and all kinds of things with intersections that had considerably fewer accidents. As a matter of fact, a number of years ago, I was involved in an accident there. I was like the fifth car in a front end, rear ender, or rear end, I was the front car. And I heard the boom, 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 you know, and I was, and a resident came out when she heard the noise and asked if everybody was all right, and that it happens a lot. And that's something I remember from because that's what happens when you're coming off of Woodward and you're going west on 63rd. Boy, I don't know what kind of signs you could put up, but the signals are going right and left, and people are cutting over, and it's a nightmare. It's a nightmare. I look at our comp plan. Our comp plan says in the, you know, you brought it up, it says in the purpose, it's the economic and physical concerns, not the social. So, you know, social concerns, evidently, it's not part of the comp plan. So if we look at it economically, this is a good deal. Commissioner Durkin brought up the tax advantages. You know, there's a lot of advantage there on the economic side. Physically, I think we have a problem with that intersection, ingress, egress. See if we get to some questions here somewhere in here. Like I say, I took a lot of notes. And as far as the residents are concerned, some of them are Downers Grove residents, some are unincorporated, and I want you to know, at least from my perspective, I'm sure from the others as well, when the county does planning in the general area, they have, was it a mile and a half or something, that we're part of that planning zone, and I just want all the residents to know that when we consider that we have some reciprocity here. You know, if the county was planning, we get a chance to weigh in on the situation. So the fact that maybe you're not residents, but you do have a voice and concerns when we do our planning as well. I just want you to feel that you are being heard and not ignored because you're not residents. Matter of fact, you probably, if this gets done, you'll probably be paying taxes by when you shop at the Walgreens if it does go up. I had a problem with comparing the traffic situation to medical facilities and that type of office. It's retail. I think it's entirely different. You know, if you go to 63rd and Fairview and some of the other ones that were noted, I don't think you have that traffic pattern or the same in and out that you would have 9, 10 o'clock at night, early in the morning. I think it's you know, the traffic is totally different. So I had a problem with that. If we do this, the drive-up hours, I think our list is 10 o'clock. I'd like to see them limited to 9 o'clock. I think 9 o'clock is reasonable. 10 o'clock I think is too late.
Can I make a comment about that?
Sure, go ahead.
Yeah, Commissioner, you brought that up about CVS. I would say we just do what CVS did on 63rd and Main. If we can find out what that number is.
That seems reasonable.
You mean hours of operation?
Yeah.
Because I know that was one of the things that you brought up and we all talked about quite a bit.
Yeah, and I think the noise level too, as you mentioned, the elevation is lower. Noise travels up, so it's going to be a little noisier as the noise travels uphill. Let's see, delivery hours. Okay. As I say, I'm trying to get through all my notes here.
You always come back.
Well, Commissioner, as far as the garbage pickup and the time constraints that Commissioner Schnell brought up, I agree with that. The left turn restrictions that was brought up, I agree with that. Commissioner Newstedt's no left, I agree with that as well. And then I'll get to the last point. One of the things we have to consider is a special use, and Section 28-1902 standards for approval of special uses. This is just one of the many things we consider when we're doing the annexation, consolidation, and the last one is special use. And the way, this probably will be more indicative of my doubts right now. In that section, it says that the proposed use or that particular location requested is necessary or desirable to provide a service. I don't think it's necessary. I have a question as to whether it's desirable right now. To provide a service or a facility which is in the interest of the public convenience and will contribute to the general welfare of the neighborhood or community. Well, if we're talking about contributing to the general welfare of the neighborhood, I think right now, probably not, but then when we look at the planning in the future, I think it could, you know, if we consider the future, it is a contribute to the welfare of the future. There's some doubts about safety. It is a definite boon to the community as far as sales tax and so forth, and most people in town will not be going to that Walgreens, as was pointed out by one of the residents. There's plenty of other Walgreens and other facilities, so they probably will not be shopping there. So community-wise, you know, all these details, I think it's good for the overall community. The question is how it affects the neighborhood. B, that such use will not, under the circumstances of the particular case, be detrimental to the health. It isn't detrimental to the health. Safety, that's a problem I have right now. Is it detrimental to the safety? It's not detrimental to morals or the general welfare of persons residing or working in the vicinity, or injurious to property values or improvements in the vicinity. So, property values, I think when we talk about planning and the comp plan and future use, I think once again, we're trying to develop this area. And as a gentleman pointed out, you know, he's lived there for a number of years. It was residential, and, you know, it was almost, I don't know, like covered wagons or something, but progress happens. And maybe it isn't a residential use anymore. And that's something we need to consider. And if we have determined that this is not going to be residential, or we want to develop this area, then we need to, at some point, approve retail or office space or something at this location. Something is going to go there. Otherwise, so to me, it's kind of a question, are we going to go with our comp plan and future plans, or are we going to make this, try and keep this residential, which is not in the plans? It's something I'm dealing with right now. So anyway, as you can see, I have a lot of questions, a lot of reading to do, and now you know basically where I'm not at right now, where I am and where I'm not. So people, you know, can still provide input. There'll be other questions, and I'll pass it on to somebody else. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner. Gentlemen, please take a seat.
Oh, yeah.
I had the opportunity to talk with some of our guests earlier tonight who are here to speak on this issue, and the question was asked quite rightly by someone that doesn't deal with this every week, like perhaps we do. Why are we even here tonight talking about this when the Plan Commission recommended against it? And I just want to set the table on that because the Plan Commission is a recommending board to the Village Council on almost all issues. And what I mean by recommending board is that we ask them to take a look at something, entertain input, to gather information, and then they come up with a recommendation. The final decision is made by the Village Council. That's myself and my colleagues up here. And sometimes the Plan Commission recommends something to us and we agree with it. Sometimes they recommend something to us and we disagree with it. Sometimes they recommend something to us and we change it completely. So that's why we're listening to everything, and we've heard and read what happened at the Plan Commission. We have the benefit of input from staff, we have the benefit of the input from the petitioner, and we've obviously had the benefit of all your comments tonight, all of which are greatly appreciated. The other comment that I heard both before the meeting and then here again is, well, there are all these other places where Walgreens will be much better located. Why can't they put it here? Why can't they put it there? And keep in mind that we're not putting anything anywhere. Right now, this property isn't even in the Village of Downers Grove. We have a petitioner who, and I'm assuming that they own the property. I know that one gentleman had a question about that, but for purposes of tonight's discussion, I'm going to assume that the petitioner is in fact the legal property owner. They're making a request, and they're making 4 different requests. One is they would like to come into the Village of Downers Grove. If they're outside the Village of Downers Grove, we can do 0 about it. So they want to come into the Village of Downers Grove. And the next, we have a decision about assuming they come into the Village of Downers Grove, how will that property be zoned upon its entry into the village? And that's a decision that we get to make. And then there's a question about consolidating these parcels through a device called a plat of subdivision, where they become one parcel that can be treated comprehensively. And then the last request is the one that has clearly garnered the most attention and discussion both tonight and at the Plan Commission level, is whether or not a special use ought to be granted that would allow for a drive-through facility at this location. If they didn't have a drive-through, we wouldn't be talking about half the things we're talking about here tonight, but of course that's the nature of the business. So the petitioner has a right to buy whatever property they want and then ask us to do something with it. No different than any one of you here. If you wanted to come into the Village of Downers Grove and you don't currently live there, you could ask, and assuming that the criteria were met, you could do that. So I don't behoove the petitioner for having chosen this site. It was their choice. They didn't choose some other site. Maybe other sites weren't available. That's their business, not ours. But this is what they've asked to bring forward. This is what they've asked us to consider. So we are, just like if it was anybody else who was asking, we're going to give them fair consideration. So as I mentioned, there's 4 things that are on the table. The first one is annexation. They are coming to us asking to come into the village. Well, that's a pretty easy decision. I don't see why we wouldn't invite them into the village if they want to come into it. That doesn't seem to be an issue. The big issue then becomes, once they come into the village, what zoning classification will apply to that property? And the one that is being requested and is being recommended by our village staff is B2, B as in boy 2. And that's important because depending on how it's zoned, there are different rules that apply to the property. And there are certain things that if it's B2, there's not a lot to talk about because we already have a code that says they can do certain things in that zoning classification. You can't change the rules in the middle of the ballgame. Then there's the third issue, which is the final plat of subdivision, which in my mind is really, if all the other things are happening, that's really a no-brainer. And the last one is the special use, which is very important, and Commissioner Waldeck and some of my colleagues have touched upon the standards there. That's really where it gets down to the nitty-gritty, and that's where I think there's been a lot of good discussion. There's going to be a lot more discussion because it leads to something called conditions on the special use. But let me talk about the 2 things that I think are important here. One is the zoning classification, and the other one is the special use request. The zoning classification. Okay, they come into the Village of Downers Grove. How should they be zoned? Well, that's a good question. We have some, but the good news is we have some guidance on this. We don't just spin a wheel and whatever it lands on, that's what it gets zoned as. We do have a comprehensive plan, and we have a future land use planning map, so we do have a guide that suggests what it ought to be. And we also have a comprehensive plan that suggests that we need to enhance our commercial corridors, particularly along this stretch. This is one of the high priority areas here for the Village of Downers Grove, and believe me, you may not believe that, but it is, because it needs some attention. No question about it. And so when there are opportunities to expand the commercial footprint, we need to look at them very seriously. And I will tell you that not just along 63rd Street, but along other avenues like Ogden Avenue and elsewhere, it is fully contemplated, and in fact, borderline encouraged, that there be some encroachment into the residential neighborhoods. Why? Because Downers Grove was founded a long time ago, and it is not a cornfield. I said that kiddingly earlier, but we can't just develop and plan a modern area with a blank slate. We have to deal with a landlocked community that, to make a commercial development successful in the modern area, almost necessarily requires some encroachment to residential areas. So that is fully contemplated. Although I fully appreciate folks saying, well, I don't want the commercial coming into my neighborhood. That is in fact the plan, because that's the only way you can make a successful corridor these days. It's no different than Ogden Avenue or elsewhere. When those opportunities present themselves, we have to look at them very seriously. And ladies and gentlemen, this is an opportunity. Someone is coming to us asking to come into the village and they're asking to turn this into a commercial opportunity for our community, we have a plan that actually encourages that. So that's why we're giving it very serious consideration, and that plan weighs very heavily in my mind because the plan was not just cranked out by Mr. Fieldman last night. It was the product of a long study and analysis and a great deal of resident input, far more than is present here today. Multiply it by 50 over a long period of time. So the plan reflects a lot of the community input. Not everybody's input, you can't reflect what everybody wants, but it is the guide for the future of our community, and we give that great weight, as we should. So I'm currently thinking the zoning classification is appropriate. Okay, it's not office, but it's not residential. There's no question about that. So to me, it coming in something other than residential is strongly encouraged by our comprehensive plan and our other planning documents. But it's a workshop. We're not voting anything tonight. Given the situation and the issues and the additional information that we've asked for, and I know Commissioner Rankin can't be with us next week, we may not vote on it next week. We may want to have the full council here so it gets due consideration. We have an opportunity to get the information that a number of folks have asked for, and that everyone gets the benefit of a full council weighing in on this. So then, to me, it all comes down to the special use, because the zoning criteria are in 28.1702 of our zoning ordinance, and there are criteria there that I've basically already summarized, so I won't repeat them. Then it comes down to the standards for approval for a special use. As Commissioner Walvack already said, and I won't repeat them, those are in 28.1902 of our village code. And there are things that you can talk about a lot of these different elements. Whether you want to talk about morals and general welfare, I mean, different people have different opinions. But there are certainly factors, I think, that are satisfied. There are others that I think we need to think about. But that's really where I think this discussion really lands. But there's more, because even if you decide that the standards for approval of a special use, which is being requested, are met, I think the real ballgame here is in the next section, which is section 28.1903. And what that says is that if we grant the special use, we can put certain conditions on it. And that's pretty much wide open. I mean, obviously, we can't do something completely unreasonable, but there are all sorts of conditions that can be placed on it. So stormwater, which we'd have to comply with the code anyway, or the petitioner would. But traffic, green space, all kinds of things we can put conditions on. And I think there's been a lot of discussion, a lot of input. So if that were to happen, all those things need to be taken into account, and quite frankly, those are important conditions, because if they are violated in the future, they lose a special use. So they're very important restrictions and conditions that have teeth. So I think what we're all going to do, myself included, is, having heard what we've heard tonight, having read what we've read, the materials we've received, not only be thinking about whether this meets all the criteria, which, if it does, people asking for something deserve a fair shake. If it meets the criteria, it meets the criteria. But even if it does, then I think there's a lot of room here for discussion of conditions that would make this hopefully address and ameliorate a lot of the issues that have been raised. I think a lot of that's already been discussed. I think a lot of efforts have already been made. But there are other things that we're hearing and listening to, and we're going to get more information on, work with our own staff, and see what else might be done. So that conversation is not over. I appreciate the cooperation and the willingness to try to be as accommodating as possible. Obviously, again, you can't do everything. We can't ask for everything. We have to reach some kind of a balance. So all those things, I think, are in play right now. And I'm not saying one way or the other because we don't vote tonight. But I just wanted to kind of frame the issue, and to me, the two big issues are the zoning classification and the special use, and then if the special use is granted, what the conditions would be. And that's why I appreciate the discussion and the cooperation, as well as all the input that we've received tonight. So other than that, I don't have any questions. This has actually been very thoroughly discussed and displayed, and I think we have more to come. Commissioner Durkin?
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. If we move the voting of this to the February 21st meeting, does that have any impact, negative impact on Walgreens' contract to buy this? No? So you're okay with that?
21st.
Because we don't meet, the 21st is the last meeting of February, and then
It'd
we
be
go...
1 week later.
Yeah. Okay.
Good?
I agree. I think it's important. I think we could use the extra week, and I think having everybody here would be a excellent idea as well. So I would go along with that.
Thank you.
You're welcome. I don't think we could possibly make a decision of this gravity without you.
Plus, we have some homework to do, so we'll get...
Well, I was kind of getting the drift that there might be a little reading to do, there might be some facts to chase down, there might be some conversations to have. There's been a lot of questions posed, and I really do think there's a lot of the special use that has yet to be resolved. So I don't have any other questions, or comments from the council?
Thank you, Mayor.
All right, well, those are the first 4 items on our first reading tonight. Thank you for coming. That then brings us to the remaining items.
2 remaining items on tonight's first reading agenda.
Although maybe you want to just let people filter out for a second?
Will do.
All right, so for those who are keeping score at home, we are now on item 8, E as in Edward, on our agenda.
And this item, excuse me, Mayor, is consideration of an ordinance regulating non-conforming signs. This is the proposed 2-year extension to the non-conforming deadline that the council discussed in December of 2011. A brief overview, in May 2005, the Village Council approved a comprehensive amendment to our sign ordinance. As part of that ordinance, the council established a 7-year amortization period or a compliance deadline for non-conforming signs. That 7-year compliance period was based on the expected life of a sign and to allow ample time for owners of non-complying signs to bring their signs into compliance. The current deadline in our ordinance is May 2012. In December of 2011, the Village Council discussed extending the deadline by 2 years to recognize the current and recent economic conditions that were not expected when the ordinance was put in place in 2005, to allow additional time for compliance, to allow additional time for the OASIS grant program to continue to work, and to frankly reduce the workload and cost to the Village of Downers Grove on any enforcement efforts that would be required. If extended by 2 years, the staff would enact the communication plan that is included in your materials. The council had a few questions back in December of 2011. Those council questions and answers are in your materials. And since that time, the Planning Commission did review this proposed amendment, and they recommended unanimous approval. In addition to that, the Downers Grove Economic Development Corporation, the Chamber of Commerce, and the Downtown Management Corporation have all reviewed the proposed amendment and submitted letters of support. Staff recommends approval as well. Staff is also available to answer any questions you may have.
Thank you. Any questions or comments from anyone in the audience with respect to this item pertaining to our sign ordinance? We already saw an example of an illegal sign.
We did. And Tom was all over
that's
that.
in Westmont. We don't allow that kind of stuff here. I actually have an announcement I would like to make and take advantage of the fact that this is being broadcast. This is at the request of the Downers Grove Police Department. So this is an important announcement if I can have everyone's attention for a moment. Hopefully we can help the situation here. The Downers Grove Police Department is presently trying to locate a missing child who resides near the 5400 block of Fairview Avenue. The child's name is John, J-O-N. He is 11 years old, about 4'10", 75 pounds, with brown hair, wearing blue jeans, an orange sweatshirt, and white shoes. If anyone listening to this or watching now has seen or has any information regarding John's whereabouts, please contact the Downers Grove Police Department at 630-434-5600. Again, that's 630-434-5600. We are trying to look for any assistance in locating a missing child in the vicinity of the 5400 block of Fairview Avenue. The child is male and answers to the name of John. So anyone listening to this that can help out with that would be greatly appreciated. Thank you very much. Back to our regularly scheduled meeting. Are there any questions with respect to the proposal regarding the sign ordinance from the audience? Just want to make sure that I didn't cut anyone off. Any questions or comments, anyone on the council? Commissioner Waldeck.
Thank you, Mayor. We had discussed this at a previous meeting, and I believe that there is support for extending this. I had some reservations, namely because of whenever we pass ordinances and regulations, they need enforcement. We always ask, if you're going to do signage, if you're going to do this or that, can we enforce it? And this is something that the business community has had a number of years to comply with. And I think, hats off to those in the business community that have complied voluntarily, not because they're new or they, new business or whatever that demanded that they change the sign. But those who voluntarily went out and expended the money to get new signage. And somehow I have paused because their competition may have decided that they're just going to wait it out, be scofflaws and just wait to get caught or something. And I do have a problem with that. I recognize the economic changes and so forth and the idea, from most members of the council that this should be extended. So I would ask, and I understand that there's a meeting of the EDC on February 10th of the Oasis team, and I would like at least to see in this process, if we grant an extension, that we limit the Oasis money so it wouldn't go past the deadline, or not very much past the original deadline, so we don't reward people for not obeying the sign ordinance. So if we're kind of sending out the message that not only didn't I comply, but if I wait, the village is going to help me pay for it. And I think that's definitely the wrong signal to send. So maybe we can get the word out, maybe the Oasis team can get the word out that there is a deadline, that it isn't 2 years from now, and that if they really want Oasis money for signage, that they could at least apply prior to the original, maybe prior to the original deadline, and maybe start planning and putting in the sign later, but at least get the application in for the signage prior to the deadline. So we're still, rewarding people for following the original plan, and maybe it'll help speed up compliance as well. I hate to see people rewarded for not complying. So anyway, that's my 2 cents. I'm sure you got the gist of what I'm saying. So
yeah.
Bill, could you describe the limit? That sounded very appealing to me. I've always been a little bit reluctant to spend Oasis money on signs. What limit were you?
Well, I wouldn't encourage anybody, even personally, I wouldn't even encourage anyone to submit for a sign, period. I don't think we ought to be using any Oasis dollars purely for changing signs.
We've included.
Well, I wouldn't even encourage what you're suggesting.
What do you mean by, you said limit? What was, describe limit to me a little bit more.
I think what he was saying is that if you're going to put it for a sign, you should do it before, you got to do it before the original statute of limitations expires on sign compliance.
It's an application deadline, is the limit?
The application deadline.
Yes. But I'm actually totally against that, because that would suggest that people should apply solely to get their signs replaced.
Well, that is
May I
currently.
suggest, one of the things we might want to do, since we're getting into actually the application guidelines and criteria of the Oasis program, which is not on the agenda, you don't have any materials on that, we could actually docket that up for a different discussion at a different time.
I just didn't want anyone to go rushing out and start making applications thinking they can get sign money. I wanted to dissuade people from that right now, solely for that reason. The normal Oasis process should continue to be followed.
However, the normal Oasis program...
Right now, they can use money for signs.
Right, they can. So that's why I've heard 3 commissioners ask for a review or at least clarification on the Oasis grant program. So we'd like to docket that up for a different discussion to make sure we're all on the same page with the current council and the current EDC leadership. We could do that pretty quickly, actually.
Okay, but this is scheduled for a vote at our next meeting. The Oasis team isn't going to meet until February 10th, and you're going to provide us information on the Oasis, so maybe we can delay the final, because it was I never really liked the idea of funding for signage only.
I think Mr. Fieldman's saying there's two different issues here.
Yeah,
So we're conflating them. The only reason I said anything is I didn't want there to be any misconceptions about someone would act upon, and you were well-intentioned. I'm not criticizing you. I was just listening and thinking, okay, if I just kind of randomly heard that comment, I don't want it to be taken out of context and someone to have incorrect expectations.
Just a reminder, the council is not obligated to grant any Oasis grant money at any time.
Well,
if there was any petition,
that's
any
true.
time
Everybody's
the
heard my
council said
opinion
no,
on it, though.
You could just deny it.
I think Mr. Castro wants to say something on this topic, which was not on the agenda.
Yes. A lot of the business owners that I've talked to on Ogden always encourage them to take advantage of the full Oasis benefits, improvements to their property beyond signage. The main reason the ones that I've talked to have not applied for Oasis funds, it's free grant money for something they were obligated to do anyway, is they just couldn't afford it. And whether they were going to re-landscape their property, get a new sign, it didn't matter that half the money was going to be paid by the village. They couldn't afford
the rest of it,
their part of it. And in many cases, these are tenants, not building owners, and because of what's in or not in their lease agreement, it's an improvement they'd have to make for someone else's property. And again, it just became an affordability issue. The manager has indicated that 66% of the signs are now in compliance. That's a tremendous track record, I think. So the other concern I would have is if we limited the Oasis dollars to the end of this, the original deadline of May, what about a new tenant that comes in or a new business next year? Would they not be able to be qualified for it? So I just think, I understand what Commissioner Waldak is saying, but the main reason that a lot of these companies have not, in the last 2 years anyway, have not taken advantage of this grant opportunity is they just couldn't afford their share of it, or they couldn't get their landlord to spring for the money. So I just think we need to keep that in mind.
Well, not only that, is it correct to say, if it's not, just straighten me out here, that to date, we have not approved of an Oasis grant that was solely, exclusively for new signage?
I don't know that.
We have.
We have.
And that's why I want to get you
Okay.
all of the information about Oasis program, keeping in mind that these decisions are completely independent because the council has never.
Fair point, fair point. All right.
We're pushing for an answer on this because it affects how we plan the rest of the year, and if we go into enforcement mode, we need to do that immediately.
All right, well, then let's stick to the item that's on the table.
Thank you.
Well, if I may, for my perspective, to grant the extension, I would like to actually tie that into the Oasis money and make sure, what we're doing and what we're not doing in the future. So if we need extra time, to change the agenda, to the 21st or whatever, I'd be happy with that.
Well, the problem is,
That's just me.
the problem, your comments are well-intentioned, but my concern is that we have a very specific issue on the table, which is to extend the compliance deadline for the sign ordinance. That's a very specific thing. Getting into what the criteria would be for the Oasis program, when we're not dealing with it in any kind of concrete context, it's too amorphous, I don't think we can mingle those two that easily.
Well, I think there's
Because there's no
different
applications,
sets of
well, exactly,
opinions.
there's no petition pending, we don't have any issues in front of us. I don't think you can just sort of sweepingly say, well, we're going to tie these things together. I don't think that's a good idea. But can I make my comment about the sign, what we're actually talking about?
Could I make a comment about Oasis?
Well, I was trying to get away from Oasis, but by all means.
Just a point of clarity.
Good evening, Ms. Crawford.
Good evening, Laura Crawford, Downers Grove Chamber of
Who
Commerce
wasn't
and
expecting to have to
Industry.
speak tonight.
No, I did not expect to have to speak tonight. Being a party to the initial conception plan for Oasis, along with Tom Dayburner, Mike Baker, myself, and other Ogden Avenue businesses, as well as Michael Cass's predecessor, my understanding, unless it has changed, was that the only time that we allow signage as a component for grant option is if it has another criteria along with it.
Well, that was my understanding.
Well, I have not been present at any meeting where we have granted money, and I've only missed one.
See what happens when you miss a meeting?
So, yeah, exactly.
There are lots of details about the OASIS program that we like the opportunity to present in their entirety before we have a discussion on OASIS.
I think that's a great
Village
suggestion.
management is begging for
Thank
us to
you.
get off this
Okay,
topic.
I'm done. I just want clarity because
Actually, before the
I cannot let the moment pass. So, thank you very much.
Okay, one final thought is, to me, they're very much related, and I would like to see a delay on this particular vote until we get the OASIS situation clarified.
Well, but I think those can be done independently of one another. I don't see any reason to delay an extension. That's almost, that's denying the extension when it's a double negative that kind of cancels it out, is what it is.
Well, I guess from my perspective, if you
Both
we
of
have
those
a
things can be
program
addressed.
on the same evening.
No.
Because to me, if the plan is to...
It's a workshop, right?
If the plan is to distribute money for signage only after the original sign compliance date, I don't like that extension. I don't want... I wouldn't approve the extension. To me, they're tied together, and that's just me, so...
I guess I'm still not making that connection.
I wouldn't want to extend the deadline on the sign ordinance if, as it stands now, we can still issue funding for sign-only requests after the original deadline.
Well, but what I'm failing to understand, and I'm sorry, we keep going back into this morass of the OASIS program. What I'm failing to understand is, who is it that's standing out there waiting for the time to expire to file some, I mean, who are we talking about? It's hypothetical is the problem I'm having with it.
Okay.
What we do know is that there's a deadline coming up on enforcement. That's a real thing that's before us.
Right.
The fact that, I don't know who this person is that wanted to get their sign but hasn't applied for it, and how would the deadline impact on that? They either would have filed by now, or waiting wouldn't do any good because they'd be out of compliance. And I don't think that it would look too good if somebody came up to us after the deadline passed for compliance and said, oh, by the way, I'll now comply, even though I didn't, even though I was a scofflaw, but can you give me money to help me do it? That's what I'm having trouble with, is who is this?
I would think that if we currently have a grant system that is willing to give money for compliance right now, and if we extend the deadline.
I think now people would apply who hadn't previously
Well,
applied.
I'd like to see people, if we told businesses that if you try and comply by the original deadline, and we have a program that is going to give them money for that, well, it isn't too. I basically want to tell them, you're not going to get money for signs after the original deadline, is what it amounts to.
Well, and I think that's a separate issue that the manager is suggesting that we take up, which I'm perfectly fine taking up, because I know exactly what I would say about that is,
Okay.
I wouldn't want to give it to him before the deadline, solely for that purpose. I mean, I think the way Ms. Crawford defined it is the way I viewed it, is that you don't get money for a sign unless it is a component of a larger facade improvement, aesthetic improvement plan that you have for your business along Ogden. Maybe that's why I'm having difficulty of understanding what the situation is.
Because my understanding is that we have been awarding sign-only money.
Again, this,
Dave would like to
all
clarify.
the reasons we'd like to give you the...
All right, well,
I guess
okay.
what's important from the staff perspective is any grant application that comes before the council is an independent decision that you're not obligated to grant, even if it complies with all the recommendations and standards. So if there's any sign-only thing that comes up anytime, and the council could just vote no.
What I'm saying is I don't think there's a danger of somebody sort of not complying and then getting money and running off saying, ha, 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 I got your money. I don't see that happening, which is why I'm having trouble with delaying the extension.
I would like to see if we are giving sign money out, which we apparently are, I would like to see that end at the same time as the original compliance.
But the manager's point is, that's very
Okay.
easy, because they would have to come before us with a petition, and then we would vote on it. So we could end it right there by saying no.
Okay.
We don't need to delay the extension to say no. That's where, I guess, where I'm getting at now. If somebody were to come forward if someone were to come before us during the extension and say, hey, I would like money solely for a sign, that could be very easily addressed by saying no.
But based on a previous workshop, one might have gotten the impression that you could.
Well, if they're listening not now, they're probably getting a different impression.
Yeah.
But that would be the subject of a different council discussion, would it?
If you want to move on.
All right.
If you want to move on.
All right, back to our regularly scheduled program. With respect to the sign ordinance enforcement extension, I'm completely in favor of it, because the original intention was for the ordinance to work through normal channels to achieve compliance on a voluntary basis, primarily through the ordinary turnover in signage, that's what's been happening. To a large degree, and that's why we have the compliance that we have today, because signs turn over for change of ownership, change of businesses, whatever. They change over for a number of reasons, and so we've been getting compliance. It's been enforcing itself. It's been working. We've had a hiccup because of an unprecedented downturn in the economy, during which that normal cycle has been disrupted. And so all we're saying is, let's let what was working continue to work, but give it a little bit more time to work, taking into account that disruption that we had. Furthermore, there's a cost to enforcement that would mean we're not only losing a benefit, but we're also now incurring an expense. And so I don't see that that makes any economic sense for us as a village. I also don't see this as encouraging scofflaws, because the 7 years was, in some respects, an arbitrary deadline that was picked because we had to come up with one that would be an end game that was looking towards and expecting there would be a high percentage of ordinary turnover during those 7 years. And it may have actually accomplished that, but for this extraordinary event, which was the recession. So that's why I think this makes perfect sense, and I think is far more in line with our self-described role as facilitators and not regulators. Commissioner Rankin.
I would just like to say I appreciate the detailed business education plan, setting some dates and a plan of action of how you're going to try to inform non-conforming people. So thank you for providing that.
Any other questions or comments on this? No. Do you want to talk about Ogden Avenue Master Plan as long as we're...
Can you give some more information about the OASIS grant program?
Yes, we will provide that. The final item of tonight's first reading is an ordinance authorizing the third extension of a final plan development amendment for plan development number 31, and I believe Tom has additional information on this extension.
I wasn't sure if you were going to call me or not.
I was not either.
An ordinance has been prepared to grant a one-year extension to the plan development ordinance number 5044 to permit the construction of a two-story office building at 3300 Wood Creek Drive. That's okay, I'll wing it. I don't know that we really need the graphics for this.
No more 3D animations? Come on.
I'm only good for
You guys have set the bar way too high now. I'm going to be expecting this every meeting.
The members of the zoning board and plan commission are looking forward to those as well. Excuse me. February 3rd, 2009. Breath savers, they're great. Excuse me. On February 3rd, that's the last one. 2009, the village council approved a plan development amendment to plan development number 31 for construction of 41,800 square foot two-story office building for the American Society of Gastrointestinal Endoscopy. And since then, 2 one-year extensions were approved by council for this proposed development. On January 11th, the petitioner requested that the village council grant a third one-year extension because construction has yet to begin on the building. They have begun to move some dirt out there, and in fact, we expect an application from the ASGE architects and engineers in the next couple of weeks, maybe a month. Very optimistic that that is happening. So it's simply a matter of the deadline not coinciding with their actual submittal date, which would have taken care of everything. Staff recommends approval. They are moving forward. We've had regular discussions. I believe there was a rep from ASGE. Perhaps he's still here. There you are. Thank you. So yes.
Demonstrating stamina as well as charisma.
Staff recommends approval of the extension, and we look forward to working with ASGE in the very near future.
As do we. Questions or comments from the audience on this item? Questions or comments from anyone on the council?
You should say something since they stayed.
Yeah, I mean, the executive director's here.
I was going to Yes? We met earlier tonight?
Yeah. I just have one comment as Pat's coming up. You know, I was pretty adamant about this last time. We brought this up, wanting to make sure that we would be moving forward and not continuously in the habit of granting extensions and extensions. Based on what I'm sure Pat will share, I fully support this and would ask you to do the same, so.
Well, now that we have you at the podium, I was trying not to put you on the spot if you didn't want to. But,
I did.
Well, that's okay. You can blame him now.
Okay.
Good evening, welcome.
Welcome. I'm glad to be here. Thank you for your patience in the last 4 years. It has been quite a journey. We are, however, at the very near end of this part of the journey. I have with me Rich McGonigal. He's from CBRE. He is our project manager. And we are pleased to tell you that we do expect to pull the building permits on February 15th, so we're very close. We had a very long meeting today. What was the meeting called today? Which are this thick, as many of you know, and it's a very exciting project on behalf of the 10,000 physicians across this country and internationally. We are very excited to become part of the Downers Grove community. We do expect to have a groundbreaking ceremony, which you will all receive invitations for, and we hope you will join us on April 27th. However, we expect the construction, hopefully, I guess, depending on permit granting, sooner than that. So we're very excited. We're getting very, very close now. We really look forward to it, and we do thank you for your patience.
Thank you very much. And for those of my colleagues who have not had the benefit of meeting you yet, would you introduce yourself?
Oh, I'm sorry. Yes, that would be nice. I am Pat Blake. I am the CEO of the American Society for Gastrointestinal Endoscopy. You pronounced that very, very well. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you for being here. It's a pleasure to meet you tonight, and obviously we're just as excited as you are about you joining our community. Thank you very much. And back to questions or comments from anyone else in the council.
And that ends our first reading today.
That ends our first reading. It brings us to item 9 on our agenda tonight, which is the mayor's report. And I have 2 things I would like to report out on. Number 1 is our standby update as to where things are with ComEd. And the update I have is as follows. Village staff here in Downers Grove is meeting with ComEd representatives tomorrow, in fact, to discuss a couple of things. 1, the status of improvements promised by ComEd at the town hall meeting that we had with residents in September of 2011. And number 2, a proposed and requested meeting between ComEd, the Chamber of Commerce, and the business community. I actually personally exchanged a correspondence with the ComEd representatives asking on behalf of the Chamber, as Ms. Crawford has requested on numerous occasions, trying to get together a meeting that would be not exactly like the town hall, but it would be similar in the respect that there would be an opportunity for the Chamber leadership as well as Chamber membership to participate in the meeting with high-ranking ComEd representatives to discuss some of the same issues or their own issues that they have with ComEd, reliability questions that may be more unique to businesses than residents, in the same vein as what was done in September 2011. And obviously, we're looking forward to involving Chamber leadership and actually setting this up, but just to let you know, we're having the conversations, they've been open to it, and staff will at least take the first step and involve chamber leadership in terms of setting up that meeting and what the parameters will be and the topics and et cetera, et cetera. So more to come on that. And there will be, as always, updates on the village website as more information comes available with respect to efforts that we're continuing on enhancing or maintaining ComEd reliability as the case may be. The second thing that I want to report out on tonight in the mayor's report is the meeting this morning at the DuPage County Stormwater Management Planning Committee. As I mentioned earlier, the DuPage County has been working on a new stormwater ordinance for some time. And in fact, it has been, due to the amount of comments and requests for comments that have been coming in from many different sources, municipalities among them, the comment period and the discussion period has been extended. The current schedule is, and there was no final determination today at the meeting. Today's meeting was primarily a workshop, if you will, where there was an interchange between the county representatives and the municipal representatives with respect to a number of different issues in the ordinance, with the expectation that there would be some policy direction given. There was some given, but there are still some issues that are open, where there are some differences between certain municipalities and DuPage mayors and managers as a representative of those municipalities, and the county staff in terms of what they would and wouldn't like to do. And I can summarize that, but given the length of the meeting and the hour, I won't go into the details unless people would really like to know about sliding scale mitigation and vegetative mitigation and fee in lieu of. I'd be more than happy to regale you with those details. Only Commissioner Barnett is smiling when he hears things like fee in lieu of. But more importantly, the schedule, because we obviously have stakeholders in Downers Grove who are currently between two ordinances. One of them happens to be District 99 and their project at Downers Grove North. And one of the things that I made sure to point out to the committee and all its members is that we should make the policy decisions. We're never going to be able to make it perfect. We're never going to be able to get everything just the way it should be perfectly, but it's much better than what the prior ordinance was, and we can continue to tweak going forward. But right now it's starting to impact people who would like to get on with their projects, District 99 being one of them. And so I encouraged the committee to decide and move on so that District 99, for example, doesn't suffer unnecessary costs and delays, which of course have an impact upon taxpayers that we share as constituents. And if we can avoid that, that would be ideal. The current schedule is still to try to get it through the Stormwater Committee and the DuPage County Board for a target adoption and an effective date in April of 2012. And hopefully we can stick to that. So unless there are any questions about vegetative mitigation, that's all I have to report for today. That will then brings us to item 10 on the agenda, which is the manager's report.
Some good news. I just received word that we did locate the youngster, John, that you announced. So thank you to the police department.
Thank you very much. Well done.
And that is all tonight, Mayor.
That's fantastic to hear. That's a big relief.
No kidding.
I know there's some very relieved parents out there. That brings us to the attorney's report, item 11.
6 items to present this evening. The first is an ordinance regulating non-conforming signs, of an ordinance authorizing a third extension of a final plan development amendment for plan development number 31 for the construction of a 2-story office building at 3300 Wood Creek Drive. An ordinance annexing 2134, 2136, 2138, and 2140 63rd Street and 6298 Woodward Avenue to the Village of Downers Grove. An ordinance amending the comprehensive zoning ordinance of the Village of Downers Grove to rezone the property located at 2134, 2136, 2138, 2140, 63rd Street and 6298 Woodward Avenue. A resolution approving the final plat of subdivision for the 63rd and W consolidation, and an ordinance authorizing a special use for 2134, 2136, 2138, and 2140 63rd Street and 6298 Woodward Avenue to permit a drive-through facility. That is all. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you very much, Madam Attorney. That brings us to item 12, council member reports and new business. Start with Commissioner Barnett tonight.
I have nothing, Mayor.
Commissioner Durkin.
Yeah, I have several that I'd like to bring up. One of them is the passing of a friend of mine who is a friend of many in Downers Grove, even though he didn't work here in our town. Sergeant Jim Bersili of the Darien Police Department actually lost his battle with cancer on Sunday. And I bring this up because, you know, we have a police department that interacts so much with our surrounding communities. And I know that when I was an alderman in Darien, I got to meet a lot of the police officers of Downers Grove through Jim in the Darien limits. And I only bring it up because, you know, I found out about it through the grapevine and Facebook and all the other ways. But any of those that know Jim, you know, he was a police officer for the city for over 24 years. And the nice thing is that the city of Darien last night not only passed a resolution honoring Jim, but they also retired his badge. And his services are going to be held here in Downers Grove at Howland James Funeral Home on 75th Street on Thursday from 2 p.m. until 9 p.m. And then the funeral services will be at Christ Church of Oak Brook on Friday at 10 o'clock, followed by burial at Mary, Queen of Heaven Cemetery in Hillside. So if we can remember the Bersili family in our prayers. I know we probably felt a lot of prayer with looking for this young boy who went missing, and thank God he was found so quickly. But I appreciate that opportunity from this council to share the news about Jim. On a lighter note, I feel like I had, when I was unemployed, I had the opportunity to kind of overshadow the Public Works Department. And I overshadowed them because I participated in the snowplow drive along our last big snowfall that we had. And it all came about 4:30 in the afternoon, and I called the manager and said, hey, I got some time, it's a Friday night. You know, I'm not doing anything being married, I have a little kid. I want to go plow roads. So I got the opportunity to ride around with our Public Works employee, Randy Summer, help me out, Dave.
Randy Somerset.
Yep, Randy Somerset. And you know, there's a couple things I want to point out. And you know, we talk as a council up here. We talk with Dave. Dave talks with his department heads about the ownership, understanding the mission that we have with service levels, so on and so forth. And my participation in the snow removal was impromptu. I mean, it was a short notice. He came in at 7 o'clock. He was told at 7 o'clock that he had to come pick me up, and I was interested. And there was really no time for him to prep. And it was just 5 hours with him of going around town and really learning and experiencing what snow removal is all about, riding in a dump truck that's 10 tons. And I also learned the teamwork that our staff have. You know, I had the opportunity to witness tandem plowing, where one truck leads and the other one follows, and they clean an area pretty quickly within 1 or 2 passes. And I personally think that is awesome. We're in, we're out, and I've encouraged Dave and his staff to look. I think I spoke to Stan Bilecki about it, that, you know, we need to look at that because, you know, we don't hear a lot of complaints about snow removal, probably because we don't have a lot of snow. Now watch, we're going to get dumped on, I hope not. But, you know, other efficiencies, and these are all ideas that our staff members come up with and share, and we execute. So this service or this opportunity of the ride-along is actually something I learned is open. So if there's any residents who are interested in participating, I don't know what kind of documentation you have to go through. I have no idea, but if you have any interest, I would highly encourage you to do it. And I would even love to see us as a village with our media crew to somehow record that and get that out there so people who can't get into a truck or not interested in it may become aware of it. Because it's interesting how many people don't move out of the way of a snowplow, and I'm sure it's the same for emergency vehicles that are en route or whatever. But you know, it's when you got that truck and they're pushing that snow and you're barreling down the street, I don't know how they can plan on stopping. I would just ask people to slow down, move aside, let them get through, get the job done, and move on. But I was really moved at the teamwork and the overall ownership that they have and that our employees have. To sense it firsthand and to know that that message is getting out there really, really blew me away. The other commercial I have for the Public Works is Unfortunately, we had a water main break in front of our home, 2 doors down, and I got to see them firsthand replacing a water main break. I mean, that's another thing. I would love to see us if we can get that on film, just for others to see how extensive work that is, you know, at 9 o'clock at night. I mean, again, I've never experienced it. I only bring it up because I'm sure there's many others. But on to the business part of my report out, I did attend with Deputy Village Manager Michael Baker, the DuPage Mayor's Manager's budget meeting. So we went to that. I know that there was some report outs or some documentation that was brought back. There's actually a follow-up meeting that's going to be taking place later this month before the budget itself is brought to the board for their approval. I also had the opportunity to attend the West Central Municipal Conference Legislative Breakfast. I brought back a packet of information that I'll give to you, Mayor, and then you can review and whoever else wants to see it.
Thank you.
And then on a real light note, late night reading here as you're unemployed, I had the opportunity to come across the Chicago Magazine. And I don't know why, but I decided to go through this very short list of what they refer to as super lawyers. And it's the annual list of top attorneys in Illinois, including rising stars. And when I got to the business litigation section, our very own mayor, Martin T. Tully, was listed on this list. So I only bring that so we could bring this to your attention, which I'm sure you probably had no idea it was out there, and I'm sure you've got a lot of business because you were in here, and I just congratulate you on that.
Well, thank you, that's very kind of you.
And with that, I just want to...
It's not quite the Grammys, but you know.
Exactly. With that, I appreciate my colleagues allowing me a little extra time with tonight's report out. So with that, I shut up.
Thank you, Commissioner. It was kind of you to share that. Commissioner Schnell.
I'm looking forward to the Ice Festival, which I'm sure Commissioner Neustadt is going to give us all the details about. So hopefully, and I think it's supposed to be really cold this weekend, so things should last.
Thank you very much. Speaking of Commissioner Neustadt.
Thank you, Mayor, and thank you, Commissioner Schnell. First, though, tomorrow, the Downers Grove Area Chamber of Commerce and Industry is holding their 2012 Chamber Choice Awards. That'll be tomorrow morning at 11:30 a.m. at the Doubletree Guest Suites. More information at downersgrove.org for that great event. And of course, the Ice Festival is this weekend, starting on February 10th, going through the 11th and 12th right here in downtown Downers Grove. The lineup includes live ice carving demonstrations, pancake breakfast at the First Congregational Church on Saturday. A special showing of the movie E.T. will be held at the Tivoli Theater with proceeds donating Noah's Hope, a great charity in town. There's a Ronald McDonald Magic Show, Radio Disney Road Crew, live entertainment at Ballydoyle Irish Pub, Two-Way Street Coffee House. All sorts of great sponsors and events happening all throughout the weekend. It's a great long-term historic event in Downers Grove. And as Commissioner Schnell said, the weather is looking like it's going to work out pretty well for it. So come on down and check out the ice sculptures, but also spend some time in our great stores and restaurants in beautiful downtown Downers Grove. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Commissioner. Commissioner Rankin?
I'm sorry, I have a few things as well. I know it's late. I participated in the chambers up and down Downers Grove. It's a stair climb that they did on January 17th. It was really fun, very well organized. Despite it was the day after the storm that I think Sean was plowing, you still had good participation. Some folks did it about a dozen times, so it was 17 flights of stairs or something like that, right, Laura? And they did it a dozen times in prep for the Willis Tower climb, so I was not one of those people. I was there. The other thing I wanted to share is the Grove Foundation is having their annual fundraiser. It's the Passport to Fine Dining. It's on March 1st. For $25, you get to have appetizers at Gatto's, Another Round, Ballydoyle, Emmett's, and Scarletti's. You can get tickets at Dream Interiors, Community Bank of Downers Grove, the downtown location in the Ogden Avenue, as well as Downtown Management. And on January 19th, Commissioner Neustadt, Manager Fieldman, and I attended the DuPage Mayor and Managers Conference Intergovernmental Planning Committee. They had a representative from the DuPage Water Commission there, and he was giving a report. His name was Terry McGee. And he was just talking about the city of Chicago's water rate increase, and said that the city hasn't invested in their infrastructure. And they have about 1,000 miles of water that are over 100 years old, and that's, they have a big capital plan in place, and that's why the rates are increasing. And then on January 26th, Commissioner Newstead and I also attended the DuPage Mayor and Manager's Transportation Technical Committee. They had representatives from different groups in the state. They had IDOT, the Illinois State Tollway Authority, and RTA, PACE, and Metra. And I think future meeting dates are to be announced. So, thank you.
Thank you for that report, Commissioner. Commissioner Waldeck.
Thank you, Mayor. I got 3 items. First off, we had an official council meeting last night at the Downers Grove Park District Golf Course. And given the fact that nothing was published as in the newspaper and beforehand, I'd like if Mr. Kozlowski or staff could look at the write-up that we put in the paper regarding council meetings, because it describes council meetings being the first 3 Tuesdays of the month, the hours, the fact when they're podcast and broadcast and all that. And if we're going to have meetings on off times that aren't going to be broadcast, we should probably have Dougitize it and put in a disclaimer so that people aren't relying on the fact that that's the only time we have meetings. That's one item. The second item, everybody, I don't know, we got a grand slam of DuPage mayors and managers, I think. I was at the transportation implementation. I think there might be opportunities, and maybe we better watch out for that, when DuPage mayors and managers has a combined meeting of the transportation groups. Too many attending. But anyway, I attended the implementation policy, transportation implementation team meeting with Deputy Director, Public Works Director Stan Balicki. And if anybody's interested in what came out of that, please let me know. I'm sure Stan brought back all the materials. For our business community, I'm sure you've seen the DuPage Transit Plan. If not, there's discussion on that and stepping that up again. So our business community should be aware of what's happening with transportation in the area. And then lastly, tomorrow night, as a matter of fact, Commissioner Newstead mentioned DoubleTree in the morning. If you can manage to hang around all day, from 6:30 to 8 p.m. is the American Cancer Society is having their kickoff for the Relay for Life of Downers Grove and Woodridge. It's a 2012 kickoff celebration, Wednesday, February 8th, tomorrow night, 6:30 to 8 p.m. I will be in attendance along with my wife. Their American Cancer Society is advertising the official sponsor of birthdays. My wife is a survivor, and tomorrow's her birthday, and I thought it appropriate that we go. And the invitation is for everyone. They will have appetizers and music and door prizes and that, and everyone is invited to attend. So if you're available, please attend that event. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Commissioner, and I appreciate you attending the Relay for Life kickoff event at the DoubleTree tomorrow night. Since unfortunately I have another commitment in the city, I won't be able to make both. So I appreciate you going and representing the council, and I think it is most appropriate that Judy is able to join you, so I'm glad you're able to make it. Just a few things real quickly from my perspective. One, I do appreciate the report outs from those who've been attending the DuPage Mayors and Managers committee meetings so far. I know that obviously everyone's on a different committee and the schedules they meet at different times. Part of the reason why we're doing this is that we're taking our membership very seriously. Now that we're back in, we're actually all participating, grabbing it with both hands and all 10 fingers. And every member of the council is on some committee. And then fortunately there are enough so that it can split up pretty nicely. So we're not only getting ideally the best gauge of what's going on and what we can benefit from, but we're actually adding our voices to the conversation. And as mentioned when we had this discussion before, not just getting in the boat, but grabbing the tiller and trying to steer it. And it's early, some of us have only had a few meetings. Oil tankers don't turn on a dime, but we're serious about what we said, and we're all getting in and putting our hands on the wheel, trying to take out of it what we can, but also add our voices and add our community's input in terms of direction and whatnot. So I appreciate everybody adding another meeting or so to their lives, because it is a sacrifice that we all make, not just for this, but all the other things that are going on. And I think having the reports like this, even very briefly, as to what's going on, I think it then helps all of us get the same benefit from your participation, so that's greatly appreciated. A lot of the executive committee things that come up, I usually try to share in different environments. I don't want to go on and on and on, so I pick on things that I think might be of most importance to the council to the extent they're not already communicated to you through the manager's office, such as the legislative program or other things, but I also try to share as much as I can, so I think that's very good that we do that. With respect to the retreat, I guess if we want to have something that indicates that there are other meetings other than our regular meetings, I think that'd be fine, but I mean, we have coffee with the council, we have budget meetings, we have all kinds of meetings. I don't know if we've ever said that we only meet on Tuesday nights at 7 o'clock. I don't think that's ever been the case. But to the extent there's any confusion about that, I don't have a problem saying that there may be other meetings from time to time that will be noticed in compliance with the Freedom of Information Act. And quite candidly, if we want to say, oh, by the way, the council has sort of decided that we're going to try having a retreat on a quarterly basis so that there are no more surprises or misunderstandings about the fact that that will continue. You know, whether or not everybody is supportive of that concept or not, it's certainly not a secret. Again, I don't have a problem with saying that. In fact, I just did. One last thing, just want to invite everybody to come downtown, of course, for the Ice Festival that starts this weekend, and February 10th, 11th, and 12th in downtown Downers Grove. What else can you do in advance of Valentine's Day than to take your Valentine to downtown Downers Grove and enjoy the activities and whatnot that are going on here in our community? It seems like every year we're either talking about it being good weather for humans and bad weather for ice, or good weather for ice and bad weather for humans. So I don't know what the perfect balance is. It's I don't know. We'll see. Hopefully it'll be something that is both nice for humans and ice. But it's a great tradition here in Downers Grove, and I would normally say it's a great opportunity for people to break free from cabin fever and get out, walk around, except that's pretty much been all winter so far. But still, come on downtown. There's a lot of fun stuff to do. There's a schedule of events on the Downtown Management Corporation's website, www.downtowndg.org. And again, that's February 10th, 11th, and 12th, and hope to see lots of my colleagues and residents at the events this weekend. That's all I have. Nothing further tonight. So with that, I will ask for a motion to adjourn.
Second.
Roll call, please.
Commissioner Schnell? Aye. Commissioner Durkin?
Aye.
Commissioner Rankin?
Aye.
Commissioner Barnett?
Aye.
Commissioner Newstead?
Aye.
Commissioner Waldeck?
Aye.
Mayor Tully?
Aye. Thank you very much, and good night.
April.
Freeze.